2021 Bloomington Public Schools. Please make sure that your microphones are off. Thank you. Today is Monday, December 14, 2020, and it is 7 p.m. The school board meeting tonight is being conducted remotely via Hangouts Meet. It is being live streamed by BECTV and will be replayed per the usual BECTV replay schedule. Okay, so let's start with roll call. It's like I have so much here tonight that I'm trying to figure this out. Okay, roll call. All those present, please indicate you're here. Director Beebe?
Here.
Director Bennett?
Here.
Director Olson?
Here.
Director Storum?
Here.
Director Starks?
Here.
Director Steiger?
Here.
And Corman is here, so all board members are present tonight. Next, we have the Pledge of Allegiance. So if we could please raise our flag. Got it? Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Next, we have approval of the agenda, and I would like to make a motion to remove in Part A the item number 3J.
Okay.
Could someone second that one?
Second, Steiger.
Thank you. All those in favor of removing this item from the agenda, please say aye. Director Beebe?
Aye.
Director Bennett?
Aye.
Director Olson?
Aye.
Director Sorum?
Aye.
Director Starks?
Aye.
Director Steiger?
Aye.
And Corman, aye. This has been approved, and so now we're going to approve the agenda as it is now with this item removed. I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda for tonight. Is there a second?
Second.
Was that Director Olson? Correct. Okay. All those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye. Director Beebe?
Aye.
Director Bennett?
Aye.
Director Olson?
Aye.
Director Storm?
Aye.
Director Starks?
Aye.
Director Steiger?
Aye.
And Corman, aye. The agenda has been approved. Okay, next we have recognitions. So we have recognitions of students, staff, and public. And we're going to start with the Omar Banderud Award. Congratulations to Mr. Derringer Funches, who is here with us tonight. He's a paraprofessional at Valley View Middle School who received the 2020 Omar Banderud Human Rights Award from the City of Bloomington Human Rights Commission. This award is presented to an individual or organization that has made a significant contribution to ensuring the rights of people in Bloomington. Omar Banderud was the first chairperson of the Human Rights Commission that was formed in 1968. I would like to invite Mr. Funches to say a few words.
I first would like to say thank you for having me. I started this journey for myself many years ago when working with our youth. But after recent events last spring, I took it upon myself to come out of my shell and do some soul searching, and I stepped up and I spoke up. With that, it allowed me the opportunity to not just learn more about myself, but be willing to step out on faith. I had the opportunity to speak to Superintendent Fujitaki, Dr. Mitchler, Ms. Gorman, yourself, and Mr. Bennett. My hopes is that as time goes on, things within Bloomington Public Schools definitely will see some changes that will be beneficial for all. As I said, I started this journey back in June, and I do hope that as time goes on, that the conversations do continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Funches, and thanks so much for all that you have done for our kids. Continue to do. We know that you work really hard, that you are a strong advocate for our students, and for sure, we have to continue the conversations. Thank you so much, and congratulations, a well-deserved award.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are very lucky to have you in Bloomington. Okay. All right, so let's move into the next one, which is the Kennedy High School Boys Soccer. And we have the MSHSL section champions, and I'd like to call Mr. John Anderson, Athletics and Activities Director.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I'm going to introduce our head boys soccer coach, Dan Buschendorf, here in a moment. Our boys soccer team overcame tremendous obstacles like every team did this fall in dealing with all the different new precautions and procedures we had to put in place because of COVID-19. They had their schedule dramatically reduced to we only played a conference-only schedule and played 11 games where they finished 5-5-1 in those games. And then we entered section play as a number 3 seed because our conference is so difficult and held in such high regard. We won our first section game against TCU 11-0. We won our second section game against Mankato Loyola 4-1. Then it snowed on us, and we had to try. We were supposed to play Mankato West, and that game got moved to Albert Lee, and we won a thrilling game 1-0 in the section semifinals. Then, because our section is so vast, we had to play the 1 seed, which was Worthington, down near Sioux Falls, South Dakota. The team traveled down there and won an absolutely thrilling match, 1-0 in double overtime. So to win the section championship. There is not a state tournament. There was not a state tournament for any fall sports this year because of the pandemic, because of the financial issues of the Minnesota State High School League. So we want to make sure we recognize our boys soccer team, which would have played in this the state tournament this year. So I'd like to introduce our head coach, Dan Buschendorf.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, John. And I just want to thank Superintendent Fujitaki, our directors of the board, and Chair Corman, too, for having us here, because Kennedy Boys Soccer really appreciates the chance at some recognition. So it's awesome. It's been an unforgettable year, 2020, so for obvious reasons, but it's also unforgettable for a lot of positives, like this championship. So something we feel our players and families will always remember and cherish. So a huge thanks go out to all the players. They are so awesome. They show up early, so excited just to get active, to see friends, to really work to reach their goals. And they were so awesome. They were amazing. They came together. They believed in our style of play that we preached or coached, and they made it work, earning a ticket to state. Our coaches, they work tirelessly to provide the environment, a safe environment for the athletes, and just really they work so hard to develop them as players and people. They really promote BPS values. So Brian Lopez, my assistant varsity coach, also coach of the year, assistant coach of the year for Section 2A. Brent Fairman, goalkeeper coach, JV coaches, Eddie Vong and Bill Schwann, B squad coaches, Ian Toledano and Nathan Stripes. I can't thank them enough for all they do. And then I have to thank John Anderson, my activities director. He's so excellent in keeping us in the loop every single way, all the time. Safety first, let's do it. And I really appreciate that, as well as our athletic secretary, Lori Esser. Registering guys online like this during the pandemic, ordering all the transportation and so on. So finally, to our families and our fans, for all the support we felt, just awesome. We made it to state, but state got dropped. But even so, we're eternally grateful just for all that we experienced and learned. So thank you, Bloomington Public Schools. Go Kennedy.
Hey, thank you so much. We had the opportunity to see the picture of the boys on the Facebook page for our district, and they look all very happy, very smiley, very proud of themselves. And we are all very proud of you, the coaches, and your boys as well. So thank you and congratulations.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Yeah. Have a lot of things to be grateful for tonight, right? And thank you.
And Madam Chair, may I just offer an additional congratulations?
Go ahead,
to,
Mr. Sorry.
Yeah, to Dan and John, because it's been a few years since we've had this much accomplishment with boys soccer. And those games between Jefferson and Kennedy were always hallmarked. And back a few years ago when I was part of the announcing team, it was really fun to try to pronounce the names of the student athletes who were playing on the teams. But anyhow, congratulations again, because it was well worth it. And I know the many years that Chris Krenz was a big cheerleader for the boys soccer team. And that's so good that the whole school rallied around the team. So thanks again.
Thank you. Okay, so next we have the Student School Board Representative reports, and a representative from Kennedy High School was unable to attend tonight, but we have with us Ms. Juma Waganda from Jefferson High School. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much. Not much is happening at Jefferson just because everything is all online with the start of the new tri, but something that did happen was our National Honor Society did a virtual card making session where everyone did like homemade cards over Google Meet, and then all those cards were sent to a hospital in St. Paul for children with cancer, just to like encourage them, especially with hospitals being so full right now. And then also our Jefferson Student Council had their freshman elections. So all the new 9th grade representatives are now part of the Student Council, which is really exciting. Even though not much is going on, just having the newbies is just fun. And just overall, students are just trying their best to get their schoolwork done, despite it being pretty uneasy. Like I said last time, motivation for pretty much everyone is really difficult, but I know of the conversations that I've had, students are trying their best, and like with the support that they have. I highly encourage everyone to stay home and mask up when you do go out. Please consider bypassing seeing your friends and family, especially over the holiday season, just to acknowledge the people that have lost their lives to the pandemic. I really appreciate all of you, and I hope that you guys have a good holiday season as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And we appreciate you too, and all of the students, because we know that during this very challenging time, you're doing the best that you can and more. So thank you. Okay, so next move on to, what do we have? Public. On the school board page of the district's website, there is a link for Bloomington residents, district staff, students, and parents to submit a comment to the school board. Submitted comments might be read during the recognition of the public portion of the meeting, providing that the comment is not related to topic on tonight's agenda, and guidelines outlined on the comment form have been followed. We will allow up to 15 minutes to listen to public comment that has been submitted prior to the meeting. If the board receives comments that exceed the 15 minutes, those comments not read during the meeting will be shared with the school board. Should there be no comments or only a few that take less than the allotted 15 minutes, the meeting will proceed. A reminder that the school board listens to public comments and does not respond during the meeting. Typically, matters are referred to administration. Mr. Kaplan, do we have any public comments for tonight?
Madam Chair, members of the school board, and Superintendent Fujitaki, we do have 3 submissions tonight. One of them is related to a topic on the agenda tonight, which is the discussion of the current winter pause on athletics and activities. We have 2 other submissions tonight that I will read to you. The first one comes from Mary Jo Lucanis, and she writes, "Tonight you are acknowledging paraprofessional Derringer Funchess and his contribution to the students in the city of Bloomington. Derringer is one of 300 paraprofessionals in ISD 271 that have been working 500 days without a contract. Despite that, during both distance learning and a hybrid, there are paras in classrooms, face-to-face helping students. There are paras that are online with students implementing teachers' lessons. The tech paras are keeping students, families, and teachers connected. Paras help distribute food when it is necessary in the spring. The list could go on and on. It is time for the district to show up and negotiate. 500 days is long enough. It is time for the district to negotiate benefits and adequate compensation. It is time to treat paras as respected staff and not just dollar signs." Our second submission comes from Mr. Bill Schwant, and he writes, "Good evening, board members, Superintendent Fujitaki, and cabinet members. Today marks the 527th day that the paraprofessionals in Bloomington have worked without a contract. This afternoon, I submitted a petition to the school board signed by 732 individuals. The petition reads as follows, quote, "The 300 paraprofessionals in the Bloomington School District have been working without a contract for 527 days. Despite this and the district's continued refusal to negotiate, paras rise to the challenges presented by shifting learning environments and rapidly deteriorating working conditions. The paraprofessionals of ISD 271 continue to put the needs of students before their own, delivering meals, transporting students, ensuring safe learning environments, and much more. And at a minimum, we deserve the opportunity to bargain for adequate compensation and benefits. Give paras the respect they deserve and return to the bargaining table," unquote. These signers are made up of Bloomington paraprofessionals, teachers, community members, as well as our union brothers and sisters from across the state. The signatures on this petition represents the support for BFP and recognizes the disrespectful nature of a school district who since June has not provided a time or date to continue toward the completion of a contract. This petition does not ask for anything more than for the district to return to the table. With that, Madam Chair, those are the only 2 submissions.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplan. Okay, so we go on to approval of the agenda, Part A. Part A includes board business, grants, contracts, and agreements. And I'd like to make a motion to move for approval of this Part A of the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Director Bennett. All those in favor of approving Part A of the agenda, please say aye. Director Beebe?
Aye.
Director Bennett?
Aye.
Director Olson?
Aye.
Director Sorum?
Aye.
Director Starks?
Aye.
Director Steiger?
Aye.
Corman, aye. This part has been approved, and we move to Part B of the agenda, and we're gonna start with committed funds. And we have our resolution. Would someone please read that resolution? Director Bennett?
Sure. Be it resolved, the School Board of Independent School District 271 approves committed funds in the areas specified as follows. Committed funds: 1, $123,495 for wellness dollars. 2, $119,431 for band uniforms and instrument replacement. 3, $527,411 for athletic and activities. 4, $324,018 for staff development. 5, $813,717 for site department carryover funds.
Is there a second?
Beebe, second.
Thank you. I'd like to call Mr. Brad Sitkovich, Executive Director of Finance and Support Services.
Chair Corman, Superintendent Fujitaki, board members. The next four, including this one, resolutions are all dealing with the 1920 audit. What this resolution is about, that the board has decided to set aside funds, committing different programs and areas to be able to carry over funds from year to year to use in specific areas.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Sitkovich? Okay, hearing none, let's vote. All those in favor of approving this resolution for committed funds, please say aye. Director Beebe?
Aye.
Director Bennett?
Aye.
Director Olson?
Aye.
Director Sorum?
Aye.
Director Starks?
Aye.
Director Steigap?
Aye.
And myself, aye. So this resolution has been approved. We go to the next one, which is assigned funds. Could someone read the resolution, please?
Madam Chair.
Director Olson, say your hand first.
Be it resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 271 approves assigned funds in the area specified as follows. Assigned funds, $3,000 for QComp Collaborative.
Second, Steigoff.
Thank you. Mr. Sitkovich?
This is another resolution regarding to the audit. What this includes is that there's a collaborative between neighboring districts that have a collaborative for be able to have meetings and the rest regarding QComp. Since our district has been one of the leaders in this area, it was asked for us to run the finances through our area. All we're doing is whatever money is left over at the end of each year is we're assigning it to that area.
Thanks. Any questions for Mr. Sitkovich? Director Starks?
So I just have a general question. Can you tell me the difference between committed funds and assigned funds?
Committed funds are that what the board is committing to specific purpose. Assign is we're assigning it to it. It's not actually it's not under the board control.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, looks like we're ready to vote. All those in favor of approving the resolution for assigned funds, please say aye. Director Beebe?
Aye.
Director Bennett?
Aye.
Director Olson?
Aye.
Director Sorum?
Aye.
Director Starks?
Aye.
Director Steigap?
Aye.
Corman, aye. This resolution has been approved. And we move to the next one, which is the operating transfers, community service, and internal services funds. Do I see a hand? Director Olson, go ahead.
Be it resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 271 approves the operating transfers of $321,522 from the general fund to certain programs in the Community Service Fund for fiscal year 2019-2020.
Is there a second?
Second.
That was Director Bennett. Thank you. Mr. Sitkovich.
This is a reoccurring resolution that we do every year. It's to pay for the facility costs of programs that are in community ed buildings. So it's the general fund paying for those facility costs where we charge the actual expenditures to those funds.
Any questions? No, seeing none, let's vote. All those in favor of approving this resolution for operating transfers, please say aye. Director Beebe?
Aye.
Director Bennett?
Aye.
Director Olson?
Aye.
Director Sorum?
Aye.
Director Starks?
Aye.
Director Steiger? We'll probably lost her. It looks like, oh, she's there. Director Steiger?
Sorry, I had lost my connection. I'm back. So, aye.
And Corman, aye. This one has been approved. And the next one is the acceptance of audit report. Would someone please read that resolution, Director Beebe?
Be it resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 271 accept the, this auditor's report, right? Okay, accept the auditor's reports from Bergen KDV Limited, which includes audited financial statements of the student activity accounts, and accompanying communication letters for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2020.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, that was Director Bennett again. Mr. Sikovich.
Chair Corman, Superintendent Fujitaki, board members, I'd like to introduce Matt Mayer, partner from Bergen KDV, who will walk us through the 2019-20 audit.
Thanks, Executive Director Zivkovic. Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you for the invitation to present tonight. I have a PowerPoint that I'm going to attempt to share here with you so that you and those online can just follow along with the presentation that way. And once that's booted up here, we'll dig in on the results of the audit for 2019-2020. Hopefully everyone can see that, but please speak up if you can't. From my perspective, it looks like it's working. And I want to share with you our role as the district's independent auditors first. The district has a responsibility each year to prepare financial statements for the public to show the results of your operations as well as the district's financial position at the end of each school year. Our role as your auditors is to come in at the end of each year to test, to examine, and ultimately give an opinion on those financial statements so that users of them can be assured that they're accurate and that you as board members moving forward can execute your fiduciary responsibility to manage the funds of the district along with administration going forward. I think now is a good time to acknowledge the work of the team in the finance department at the district under the leadership of Executive Director Zivkovic. I want to also specifically recognize the efforts of Controller Kim Agate, who played a major role in getting these numbers together and responding to our request. It obviously was a unique year doing the audit completely remotely this year. But with the technology both on our side and at the district side, with the cooperation of your entire team, we have an excellent product for you, and it was like nothing was different this year than the past. The quality of the audit, the quality of the presentation is just as good. The product of the audit, if you will, is our independent auditors reports, and we have 4 of them that we typically issue. First is one on the financial statements themselves, as I indicated, and that particular one, the independent auditors report, we're providing you an unmodified or a clean opinion. I always say that's the best that we can give you, and it means that the numbers that we'll be analyzing in a little bit do truly accurately represent the district's results of operations and financial position at the end of the 2020 school year. Another report that we're required to issue is one on Minnesota legal compliance. This has to do with all of the state statutes associated with running a school district in the state. And we look at things like conflicts of interest, how you do your contracting and bidding, how you invest your deposits and your other funds at the district. And happy to report no findings there for the 1920 school year. Another major portion of our audit is to take a look at your internal controls. And internal controls are the way that the district does business. Your policies, your procedures, how you transact, how you make sure you get accurate financial reporting at the end of each year, safeguard your assets. And if we have any concerns with the way that you are proceeding in any of those areas, we'll bring those forward to you as a board so you can evaluate and react and respond to those as you see fit. Again, I'm happy to report that there were no issues this year that rose to the level of a material weakness or a significant deficiency. So a clean report for you again this year on internal control. And finally, one of our reports that you typically see at this time of year is going to be delayed. And I want to give you the background for that. It has to do with your single audit. And a single audit is a compliance audit required by the federal government. You receive significant federal dollars each year, whether it be your food service activity, your special education, your title programs, and we're required to test those on a rotating basis for any major funds that you receive. So every couple of years, every particular program gets touched that way. During 2019-2020, you received significant CARES funds from the federal government associated with the COVID situation. And unfortunately, the federal government was on the ball and getting the dollars out, but all of the regulations associated with that, including the rules that I need to use as my auditor to test those, are not available. They said late autumn. Here we are in December, and we still haven't seen them, unfortunately. So you do have a March 31st, 2021 deadline for those, so we are still within the window of time allowed for that. It's certainly understanding that we can't issue an audit without the rules or the guidelines established, but once those are in place, we anticipate that turning around very quickly. We have done our preliminary work. We're very comfortable with the work we've done so far, so we don't anticipate any surprises coming from the new guidelines, but until they're out, we're unable to issue that report. And I assume Director Zivkovich will come back to the board for one final acceptance of that report once it's available in the new year. With that, I'd like to provide some analysis on how the year went for the district financially, and I want to start that in the context of the budget. As board members, your role is to establish a budget each year, which lays out the parameters for spending, as well as the expectations of revenue, and also determines what level of financial health you would like the district to have at the end of each fiscal year. Now for 2020, the plan from the board was to utilize some of the fund balance, and that means that expenditures were planned to exceed revenue for the year. The original budget called for deficit spending this year of about $3.8 million. During the year, the outlook ended up being a little bit better, and administration came back to you for amendments to that budget and anticipated about $1 million better than the original budget, but still a decline of about $2.7 million. Once the final results were in for the year, the district significantly outperformed on that budget. And rather than a deficit of $2.7 million, there was actually a surplus in the general fund this year of $3.3 million. If we take a look at the reasons for that, one of the main reasons was the revenue side, about $3.7 million higher than anticipated. Now that does seem like a large number, but if we look at it in the context of a percentage, it's only about a 2.3% variance. And again, fortunately, it's on the positive side, helping the district's financial position overall. If we dig a little bit deeper into those numbers, you're going to find that special education dollars had a large impact on that. You came in significantly over the projections associated with that. That's a very complex formula, both at the state level and at the federal level. And I think the district generally wants to be conservative on that, so there's no surprises. Incorporated into that is I mentioned, some fairly complex formulas, as well as the obligations that you are required to pay to other districts for servicing your residents, and the same coming in. So a lot of that data is not available at the end of each year, and sometimes there's carryover dollars from year to year associated with that. Another major factor is that CARES funding that I was talking about. When the budget was put together, COVID was on no one's radar, and there's about $500,000 of revenue that came in associated with that during the year that wasn't in the original budget. Spending for the year came in under budget by about $2.3 million. A lot of that was on the capital side, some capital that was anticipated but ultimately not spent. And then there was also savings in the pupil support area related to transportation, and then also in some of the instructional categories overall. But again, $2.3 million seems like a significant number, but again, about 1.5% variance on the budget. So actually, the budget was very well executed with only a 1 or 2% variance both on the revenue side and the expenditure side. And as a result of that, again, a surplus for the year of about $3.3 million rather than the anticipated deficit. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here. I want to talk a little bit about the students that the district served during the year. And the significant revenue streams of the district are the property tax levy, mostly the referendum I'm speaking of here, and also general education aid from the state. Both of those are based on your student count, the number of students that you're serving. So tracking that, keeping an eye on that is going to really help you use that as a barometer on the district's financial health or the revenue stream that's available for spending on a year-to-year basis. And one thing that was unique about 2020 was that it was the first time in the last 5 years that you've actually seen a decline in the number of students served. This is a pupil unit number or a weighted number where your secondary students are receiving that 20% premium or bonus, so it doesn't directly correlate to head count. But in 2019, you served 11,482 pupil units. In 2020, that number fell by about 1% to 11,365 pupil units. Now, fortunately, that did not have a significant impact on your revenue stream for the year. Revenue was actually up this year about 3.8% or about $6 million year over year. A big part of that was state sources of revenue, where special education aid came in better than anticipated. And even though revenue on your student count was actually flat or the student count was actually flat or declining, because of a 2% increase in the formula allowance, your general education aid was actually still higher year over year from 2019 to 2020. So about $6 million increase from 2019 to 2020 on revenue, again, about 3.8%. Most of that having to do with the state revenue as well as the local property tax levy, about $2.5 million each there. Spending for the year was flat from 2019 to 2020. There's only about a 1% increase in spending from one year to the next. And you can see here, actually less than 1%, only about $100,000 increase in real dollars from 2019 to 2020 on a $163 million budget. So again, as we saw earlier, you came in under budget overall. And the reason for that is basically because you spent the same amount of dollars in real dollars year over year in 2019 as you did in 2020. And where those dollars are being spent, I think, is important as well. This pie chart shows your priorities as a district, and you can see here that 69% of your spending actually gets to the classroom directly in the instructional categories. About 3% only is going to school district administration, and another 3% to district support. Pupil support that you see here at 8% is mostly your transportation cost, and sites and buildings is your facilities cost, maintenance, utilities, and the like. So again, you can see almost 70% are directly hitting the classroom and the students. Take that back a year, and that's actually an improvement over 2019, where it was about 67%. But the numbers are very consistent from year to year. We like to see that, as well as your auditors. It shows a consistent, regimented budget process that's executed very well from administration year over year. I apologize for the type on this one, the size. If you have it in your materials, you may want to look at it there. But what this chart does is puts that all together. And as we saw earlier, there was about a $3.5 million increase in your overall fund balance year over year. And most of that landed in what we call an unassigned category, or what I would call the discretionary fund balance of the district. As a board, you just passed some resolutions to commit fund balance and also assign fund balance. And those are basically taking dollars off the table for priorities that you as a board have to make sure that they're utilized for that particular purpose. You have that discretion. You also have a portion of your fund balance called restricted fund balance, and that's on top here. And those are dollars that are mandated by the state to be used for a particular purpose. Mostly capital related, whether it be long-term facilities maintenance or your capital projects levy or your operating capital dollars. They are not available for spending necessarily as you as a board would like to see them. You certainly have input on how you utilize them within the confines of the restrictions that you have. But while they're a part of your financial health, they're not dollars that are on the table for discretionary use as board members. So what's left over then is that unassigned amount. And what was nice about the increase in 2020 was that most of that did fall to that unassigned category. Now, as a board, you have a fund balance policy that says you want to have a fund balance somewhere between 5 and 8% of your overall spending. And there's a lot of different ways to look at that, depending on what's in the numerator, what's in the denominator on that. But one number that's a universal number that the state uses is what's called unrestricted fund balance in relation to unrestricted expenditures. And a typical average district in the state of Minnesota has a fund balance right around 20%. You can see that blue bar there has been very consistent and year out as we average all the districts in the state together, that ends up being around 20%. Bloomington Schools actually was in that range about 5 to 10 years ago and utilized that fund balance, has been spending that down over the course of the last few years. And you can see from 2016 to 2019, excuse me, that trend continued, and you bottomed out around a 9.4% fund balance at the end of 2019. With the outperformance of the budget in 2020, that number is back up to about 12.6%. And that's an ideal time to be at or slightly above your fund balance policy, because we have some concerns about the future of school district funding and financing here in the state. This chart here is really a relatively boring chart. Right now, the last 5 years, your cash balance and your fund balance, there's been relatively a direct correlation between the two. There's typically about a $20 million disparity in that you have $20 million more cash in hand at June 30th than you have fund balance, because you receive your property tax settlement ahead of each fiscal year. That comes in May. A $20 million check from Hennepin County arrives at the district, but it's intended to be used for the following school year, so it's not part of your fund balance. The concern we have is that the state has a significant budget challenge ahead of it. And typically, historically, the first place that they go to help shore that budget up is their major line item on their budget, and that's K through 12 funding. And they typically do not cut funding. In my 20-year history, I've not seen a cut year over year. But what they do is delay the funding to school districts and make you wait for those dollars to arrive. At the state, they use a cash basis of accounting. If they can balance their inflows and their outflows, they consider their books balanced, and that's what they typically do. Right now, you're paid on a 90% basis. That means you receive 90% of your state monies throughout the school year, and 10% comes after the end of the school year is over. I anticipate that ratio is going to decline, and it may decline significantly. So keep an eye on the legislature this winter as to where that's going to land. At the peak of the recession back in 2008, we saw a 37% holdback. You were only getting 63% of your dollars during the school year, 37% after the year was over. So you can see that a 12% fund balance is quickly erased as a result of that. And there may be the need for cash flow borrowing or other challenges associated with cash flow that you're going to need to navigate with administration. So I think you've set yourself up very well for what may be some storm clouds out on the horizon when we look at the 2020 fiscal year. But I want you to be conscious of that, and administration, I know, will keep you posted on where they see things going forward. And also remember that cash needs don't always correlate directly to financial health. Your financial health at the end of the 2020 school year is solid in relation to your fund balance policy, your internal policies that you've established for yourself. And right now, that helps with your cash flow. But we'll need to see what happens ultimately with the state's decisions this winter when it comes to that. Want to wrap things up tonight with just a quick look at your other two operating funds. One of them is the Food Service Fund, which had a very unique year this year, not serving students on site. So you'd think that the activity would go down significantly, but actually it went up year over year. And that's because of the pickup program that you had at the district through the latter portion of the year. Fortunately, that particular program is funded by a different federal source than your typical on-site meals. The reimbursement is better for that. And so whereas you had deficits in your food service fund the last couple of years running, you actually had a surplus here in 2020, and were able to build on that fund balance to almost $1 million fund balance, or nearly a 20% fund balance in your food service fund to end the 2020 fiscal year. The fund that got hit the hardest during the COVID situation was the Community Service Fund. And that's because those are the fee-based type classes that are, evening classes, typically off school hours, and again, a fee-for-service type basis in many situations. And with those classes not being in session, those fees not being collected, the revenue in this fund took a significant hit year over year. but the cost associated with those particular funds, the salaries, the benefits, the other commitments that you had, did not go away. So those expenditures were still there as well. So a fairly significant deficit of about $671,000 from operations. The transfer in that you just approved tonight helped offset that to a certain extent. And fortunately, this fund had a very strong financial position or fund balance to begin the year of a little over 40%. So the deficit operations in 2020 were actually easily absorbed. This fund, just to remind everyone, has to do with community education, the community service programs, school readiness, preschool screening, early childhood, all fall into this. They each have their own individual fund balance, and I'm happy to report each of those had a positive position at the end of 2020. So despite some challenges for the last school year, this fund weathered the storm quite well. I think I'll leave it at that for tonight. There were some other charts, some other analysis in the documents that you received, and if you had some questions about those that I did not cover in my presentation, I'd be happy to stay online until you're comfortable accepting the audit. Thanks again for the opportunity to present to you.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. And are there any questions for Mr. Meyer or for Rad Sitkovich? Director Beatty.
As this being my first experience as a treasurer of the board, I found it really helpful to have all of the explanations, especially at the end, talking about the legislative summary and how that was impacting things with revenue sources we hadn't had in the past. I think it was significant to see how that had benefited us and helped us. And also learning about formula adjustments and what we will have to be doing come the future. So I just want to thank you for all of the extra wording in there. It was quite an education reading. And I think I'll be a student of this type of thing for quite a while. There's much to learn. And I'm thankful that someone like you who understands it all can put it into some type of vernacular that we can understand. I also understand that this is available to people in the community to read. Is that true?
Yes, Director Beebe, this will be put on the district website tomorrow.
Okay, great. So, because I had somebody just ask me like last Thursday, how is the district doing financially? And I was grateful to be able to say, well, we're doing pretty well right now. So thanks to your leadership and also thanks to some of the funding that came in that we didn't anticipate. So thank you, Rod, and thank you, Matt. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, Director Sorm. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. And I also wanted to express my gratitude for Matt. How many years has it been now? 10? That you presented to us?
A little north of that, I think. It's probably close to getting close to 20. So, yeah.
Wow, you know, and it's been so well. And I know Rod's been here a lot of the times when we've done it, but he answered my question that it was on the website. But I remember when we used to get big packages of these charts and graphs and so forth. And me being a numbers guy, I always like to do that and use my highlighters to go through a bunch of the numbers and tack up and then ask all kinds of questions about it. But you explain it so well and highlighting just the necessary charts and graphs that are important. But getting to the point about, is there an indication or do you sense that the legislature in its infinite wisdom is going to try and tap the money from the schools in order to take care of some of their immediate needs?
I hate to project as an auditor, my specialty is looking in the rearview mirror versus ahead. But I don't see a scenario where they can't touch you in some way, I guess. As I mentioned, K through 12 spending is one of their major line items in their budget. They have a significant deficit, although it's been improving, I hear, the last couple of weeks. The projections looked a little bit more optimistic, but we're still going to have a deficit. And again, I think what I would prepare for is that cash flow situation. And that'd be the one thing that I would have significant concerns for you on. And as I mentioned earlier, I think you're probably going to be able to weather the storm, even if it goes down. I don't know if Rod has done any projections on this yet or not, but even if it goes down to a 80% or a 75 or 70% holdback or a payout with a 20 or 25% holdback, your fund balance and your cash position, because of the levy-based revenue stream that you have, is going to help you weather that storm significantly. I've heard everything from a zero increase in the general education aid formula, which is certainly a possibility. But then I've also heard talk of a hold harmless when it comes to your student count that I talked about, locking in a student count pre-pandemic in a way that will allow you to count on a general education revenue stream based on historical numbers versus current numbers. So how that's all going to get synthesized at the district with a split in the political side on both the Senate and the House, some kind of compromise is going to land, but almost inevitably there is some impact to the schools. I would prepare for the cash flow and keep your ear out on the funding side so you can prepare, respond, and react to that. Unfortunately, you're in a position to start thinking about that 21-22 budget right now, and you're not going to have that news from the legislature probably until May, if we're fortunate that they get it done in their regular session. So.
Thank you very much. And we're going to have to make sure we keep in touch with our legislators in order to have them be aware of the potential problems. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you. Well, Director Starks.
So my question is about the $2.5 million in additional revenue from the state and then the $1 million from the feds. And either Mr. Zikovich or Mr. Mayor can answer this. Are we anticipating that these are one-time increases, or are these things that we could potentially count on as increases going forward?
On the state end, the special ed, about $2.5 million is probably something that would be ongoing, that we would see based on our expenditures of formula. The federal end of an additional $1 million is more of a combination of carryover of prior year federal and also some of the COVID dollars. We'll probably see an increase, as you'll see when we go through the budget update, of additional federal dollars. But in that 21-22 year, pretty much all those go away. So it's going to be the state. We feel that it should continue. The federal will probably jump up a little bit, but then drop back down to our normal levels.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, so I think we're ready to vote now. So all those in favor on approving the resolution to accept the audit report, please say aye. Director Beebe?
Aye.
Director Bennett?
Aye.
Director Olson?
Aye.
Director Storm?
Aye.
Director Starks?
Aye.
Director Steiger?
Aye.
And Corman, aye. This one has been approved. Thank you. Thank you both. Okay, let's go to the next one, which is the 2020-2021 budget, mid-year budget adjustments. Could someone please read that resolution? Director Bennett.
Yes, be it resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 271 approves adjusting the 2020-21 budget for all funds by increasing revenues by $30,557,561 and increasing expenditures by $4,938,641.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Steigoff.
Thank you. Mr. Setkovich.
So this again, once we get through about halfway through the year, we get enrollment and the rest, we update our budget to give us a little better picture of where we're at for the remainder of the year. This is to provide information for the board to be able to do a proposed budget revision, and we look for action tonight. The reason for this is that we've had updated audit numbers, which you've just received from Mr. Mayor. We have updated enrollment that you received in November. And then any legislation and financial information, our federal dollars, bonds that we sold since we last did the budget. All those are items that have been updated since the original budget was done back in June. So just to kind of give everybody an idea of our different funds, so we have our capital and deferred maintenance, which is our operating capital, our alt facilities, which is deferred maintenance, construction, capital projects, which is our technology and security levy, our debt service, which is bond interest and principal payments, our internal services, which is our dental, medical, self-insurance, our other post-employment trust and the debt on that trust, our other internal service for vacation and severance, and then our operating funds of food service, community service, support programs for community services, agency funds, and then the general fund and transportation. So if we start out with the operating capital fund, the audit this year, we started with a $6 million beginning fund balance. We ended up pretty much flat for this year. What we were projecting for revenue and expenditures for the revised or the original budget was pretty much flat revenues to expenditures. Part of the benefit of our capital that we just didn't spend some of our dollars this prior year. That's why you see an increase of the $281,000 increase of expenditures between the original budget and the revised. So originally we're looking at a ending fund balance of $5.7 million, which you can see is still about $1 million better than what we expected the prior year to end up. If we look at all facilities, again, we were planning on spending down. The big project there is our Valley View Middle School project, with coming at an ending fund balance of just over $3 million. We were expecting coming into this next year a kind of a break even. What the board did back, I believe it was in September, was we sold bonds for the next 2-year time period because of the interest rates and where we were at this point in time. That's where you see the additional revenue, a slight increase in expenditures. So the net effect is after this year is we've completed all the Valley View project, and it's having this $22 million for remainder payments, and then also to start the next 2 years worth of projects in all facilities. The capital projects levy, which is our technology and security, we came out with a spend down this current year from audit of $561,000, which is pretty close to what we were planning. If you kind of see the 2.7 to the 2.8, we planned on spending an additional $1 million. We reduced that. Some of the costs that we were expecting to be in the capital projects fund is actually were moved to the general fund for some of the programming with Bloomington Online. So overall, looking at it for this next year, looking at a spend down of the revised budget of $154,000, or ending with a ending fund balance of just over $2.5 million. Debt service, our bond and interest and principal payments. We were expected to have an ending fund balance of right around $1 million. We actually came in about $100,000 better than that. no change in the original budget to the revised budget, showing that we have an ending fund balance here of $476,000. Remember, with how we handle the debt service, the state requires us to levy 105% of what we owe on interest and principal, and then over time they take it back. So we're in a kind of a time period here that they're taking some of that money back through the reduction process in the levy. Our self-insurance dental, pretty much a wash of revenue and expenditures between the 2 years. Actually came in about $100,000 better than what we expected. Again, no change in what our revised budget is compared to our original budget. Dental, looking at here is we came in about $500,000 better than what we expected. We've been continually being able to have a strong fund balance in this budget. If the board remembers, the board has the last couple of years only done a 1% increase on premiums within the food service fund. I mean, within the medical fund. It's still staying strong with only that 1% increase. So we're able to manage it based on all the great work of our insurance committee and the work of all our employees in the way of managing their health. Again, we don't see any need for a change between the approved budget and the revised budget. Other post, the OPEB trust, other post-employment benefits, we ended up being about $1 million better than what we expected in the way of spend down of fund balance this current year with audit. Again, no change between the original budget and revised budget. The debt on those bonds that were sold to provide for the trust, and again, remembering the trust was set up to be able to help the general fund by about $1 million a year of not having to pay for severance benefits and health insurance for retirees going out into the future. So it was a protection for the general fund. So it wasn't dealing with general fund balance. It was paid for through the trust itself. So if you look on the debt of here, we came in a little bit better than what we expected for an ending fund balance of about $150,000. Again, no change between what we're expecting for the original budget versus the revised. The other internal services fund, again, we a little better in this area also, coming in about $1 million better. Again, no change from what we expected for spending of original budget versus revised budget. Kind of now we get into our operational funds. So we start with food service. And again, as Matt mentioned in his presentation, because of the great work of the food service team and all of the different groups, the paras and others that helped out this spring, we were able to have a stronger fund balance than what we were expecting. We were expecting to end the year at about $561,000. We ended up at $970,000. So based on all the great work of the team and support from other areas, we're able to keep food service solid during those challenging months at the end of last year. Kind of looking at as we carry forward, we show that we have a little bit gain in revenue, but a lot of that revenue gain is some federal dollars that are coming in. We got a grant for $783,000 for adult meals, but we're expecting some of the other areas of revenue to be dropping down. So the kind of the offset with that is the $76,000. And then the expenditures for doing the grab and go meals are more expensive in the overall than what we see from our normal meals. And that's why you see an increase in the costs. So the net effect is about $150,000 more in expenses, still showing that ending our fund balance at $763,000, or about 263 better than what we expected this year to end up. Community ed, as we talked and Matt mentioned about community ed taking the hit last year, even more substantial of reductions this year based on what we're seeing out there for loss of revenue within Kids Safari, within building reservations, and their fee generated areas. So we came in last year about 500,000 better than what we were expecting to come at when we budgeted it. But what we see is coming in of showing about an additional $1.2 million worse of spend on a fund balance between what was in the original budget and the revised budget. 3 million of that being revenue generated, and the department tried, or the fund has tried to reduce their cost by $1.8 million, but we still have that shortfall with them having an ending fund balance of $3.1 million, still having a solid financial position, but has taken quite a bit of a financial hit during these times. Support programs, this is the area that you did in the resolution of moving those dollars from the general fund for buildings and the rest. So really no significant change here. We show kind of a break even at the end of the year, a semi-loss of $1,000. Moving forward, we see it as kind of a wash between revenue and expenditures. Agency fund, this was a new at the start of this year. Where if the board remembers that we used to have student activities, we used to have BECTV as part of their own separate funds. Based on new guidelines by GASB and the rest, they need to be pulled into the general fund, but we break it out because we want to have that true transportation general fund by itself. So what's included in these areas, in the two areas is showing we came in a little bit less than what we expected to come in, starting out with no change in our revenue expenditures for next year, still showing a fund balance within this area of about $217,000. The last one is a general fund. Here's where Matt mentioned is the biggest piece is kind of what where he talks about the unassigned. This is really what we talk about is our unassigned fund balance itself. So we started the year with $10 million. Our revenues were at 150 million, expenditures at 146. The shift between the net shift to committed or restricted funds was a little over $5,000 for an ending net $3.8 million better than what we expected, or having an ending fund balance of, sorry about that, of $13.9 million or 9.5%. We showed that we have an increase in revenue between the two years of the revised budget and the original budget of $400,000 or $4 million. The majority of that is the CARES dollars, the federal dollars of about $4 million there, $3.5 to $4 million. The other is the additional $2.5 million of revenue for special ed, which Director Starks asked about before. That's offset by our enrollment dropping by being lower by about 260 students, which is about $2.5 million also. So it's pretty much a wash between the extra special ed revenue and the extra the drop in enrollment. Expenditure increase are a lot of the additional expenditures that we've had to incur based on with COVID and the rest offset with the federal programs. So overall, what we're showing is that we expected to start this year at just under $9 million. We're actually going to be at $13 million, but we're actually spending down some of that fund balance because of the enrollment drop and some of the other expenditures to end this year at a 10.39. So pretty much how we started the 2020 audit is where we'll look like to end the 2021 school year. So the next steps is looking for board approval, and I'll open it up now to any questions regarding any of the funds.
Thank you, Mr. Sitkovich. Questions or comments, board members? I don't see any hands up. So, okay, Director Beebe, go ahead.
Can you just refresh my memory about agency funds? You said those are booster clubs, and what else might be included?
No, there's student activity.
Student activity.
Not booster clubs, student activities, and it's BEC TV.
Oh, okay, great, thank you.
Anyone else? Director Starks.
So you don't have to go back on the slides on this, but the capital projects fund, you mentioned the $1 million was related to Bloomington Online School. So can you kind of explain, I'm trying to figure out how that works. So any expenses related to Bloomington Online School could come out of capital projects instead of general fund, or are there certain things that don't qualify?
I think what happened was the district determined after we provided the revised budget that dollars that were budgeted originally out of capital projects levy could not be budgeted out of capital projects levy, had to be budgeted out of general fund.
Okay, so Bloomington Online School is being paid for out of the general fund now?
Correct.
Okay.
Director Starks, go ahead.
Okay, so then my other question is, so when we look at the general fund, and you had mentioned, you know, it was the increases were from CARES Act and from special ed, but then decreases were related to enrollment. So if we're looking forward to the legislature, nope, as I'm saying this out loud, I'm realizing that won't affect this budget. It would be next year's budget. Never mind. I'm a year ahead.
Anyone else? No? Okay, looks like we're ready to vote. Okay, so all those in favor of approving this resolution for the mid-year budget adjustments, please say aye. Director Beebe?
Aye.
Director Bennett?
Aye.
Director Olson?
Aye.
Director Storm?
Aye.
Director Starks?
Aye.
Director Steiger?
Aye.
And Foreman, aye. And this one has been approved. I think I actually had it twice here. So we move to the next one, which is the final 2020 payable 2021 property tax levy. Someone please read that resolution. Who has it read? Director Starks.
Be it resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 271 approves the proposed final property tax levy for the 2020 payable 2021 levy of $62,366,022. Be it further resolved that in the event of any changes to levy amounts by the Minnesota Department of Education, it is the intent of the School Board of Independent School District 271 to levy the appropriate amount as allowed by law.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, well, second by Director Bennett. Okay, once again, Mr. Sitkovich.
This is kind of the first final thing for the 2020 2021-22 budget year to start the budgeting process. These numbers will be used in us to start developing the 21-22 budget. So tonight we look for board action to approve the final levy. What are we required to do as part of this is do a truth and taxation process, which is providing our budget information, giving the public a chance to make comments on both the budget and the levy, and then also provide what our actual pay 2021 levy information is. Kind of a history of where we came with this. Back in September, MDE provided us with our original information. The board approved a preliminary levy back on the 28th of September. We provided that information to the county and the state on September 30th. In November, the county prepared truth and taxation notices that went out to both individual residents and businesses. And then tonight, we're finalizing those final certificates. So the truth and taxation process, as I mentioned, kind of does both the budgeting and both levies. So we'll start out with the budget, the current school year budget. As I just mentioned with our budget presentation, is kind of why we do these in the order that we're doing them, in the way of starting with the audit and then revised budget and then levy, is because all of them play into each other as we go through the presentations. So if we look at all funds within the district, our revenues for the 2021 year budget is $227 million, expenditures of $213.7 million, or revenue over expenditures of about $13.4 million. The majority of that is, as we went through the budget, was due to the additional bonds that we sold within the all facilities area, which is about $30 million. That made up the majority of the improvement here over revenue over expenditures. If we look at the general fund itself, remembering the general fund when we talk in this perspective and also with the audit, it includes both all facilities. Part of all facilities, it includes the operating capital and capital project levy. So it's kind of combining those pieces into what the state considers as the actual general fund. So with that, we show that 169.3 million in revenue, 173.3 million expenses, or a spend down of $4 million. So if we go and look at our sources of revenue, for all funds, the 22.7 million, you can see state aids, which include formula revenue, special education, and other state revenues is 51%. Property taxes, which is our operating referendum, our safe schools, equity, career tech, community ed, debt is 27%. Federal is 4%, which includes both title, special education, and other. Fees, tuition, any rentals, local fees, and then food service, which includes all the state, federal, and local for food service. If we look at the general fund itself, you can see the state aid bumps up quite a bit because you don't have as much of the fees and the rest associated with that. You look at 65% is state aid, 28% being property taxes, and 5% being federal. You can see a very small amount being tuition and fees. If we go to expenditures, looking at expenditures on the overall of 23.7, you see our instructional, we kind of break it out a little more than what Matt was breaking out in the audit, but regular instruction 36%, vocational 18%. So you're looking at about 55% of our total budget is in the classroom itself. Community education is 5%. Instructional services, which includes both our assistant principals, media center, student development counseling. Our pupil services, which is 9%, is our health, our psychologists, our social workers, transportation, food service, building, site and building, which is custodial, utilities, and then administration is the superintendent, assistant superintendent, principals, and district support is our accounting, HR, payroll, technology. And then if we flip to the general fund itself, you can kind of see back to where Matt was talking about before of showing that with the general, you're looking at 63 or 67, 68% of it's true in education. And then you can see the other pieces percentage-wise. If we go to proposed taxes, here's where the truth in taxation process is. The district, as we talked earlier, the district puts together their preliminary. That goes to the county. Tonight we have the truth in taxation process. Once the school board certifies it, the counties will set out tax bills this spring. There's 5 categories within the levy calculation. It's referendum, referendum other, community services, debt service, and then other. If we look at the referendum between years, it's down about $126,000. The main reason for that decline is we have budgeted enrollment to drop. The same thing with adjustments. What it's showing, as we talked about before, is when you plan for the budget or audit, when you plan for the levy 18 months ahead of time, a lot of the information has to be adjusted. In prior year, there was an increase in revenue that was provided through referendum of about $342,000. The adjustment for this year was a negative 178 for the net of 520 drop in there for overall $646,000 drop in our referendum dollars. Our equity levy, it's used to reduce disparity between the highest and lowest revenue districts within the region. You can kind of see there, these are all enrollment driven. So you can see a slight decline here also of $128,000. Community services, pretty much flat between the 2 years for overall. Debt service, looking at here, you can kind of see we had a slight uptake in the actual principal and interest. But as we talked earlier with the budget, you can kind of see here how the state does adjustments, where last year they adjusted $514,000 of our levy. This year they're only adjusting $7,300 of our levy. So looking at our overall comparison of our levy, last year our projected levy was $61,731,000. This year it's $62,366,000. Increase of about $634,000 or a 1% increase. We for years kind of broke this out into what the operating referendum, which is the operating referendum and equity increase and decrease is. You can kind of see here that area is declining about $774,000, where our non-referendum items are going up a $1.4 million. So the net effect again is $635,000 or 1%. We work with the city and county to be able to compare ourselves to where we are from year to year regarding how it's going to impact a medium size home. The medium size home in the district went up $2,500 or 0.9%. The county had a 0% increase in their levy. So their levy actually went down $33 or 3%. The city increased their levy by 2.75%, went up $4 or 0.4%. Our district levy as an overall went down $1 or down 0.1%. So the overall taxpayer on a median-sized home saw a $76 reduction in their levy or a 2.1% reduction. So looking for the board for action tonight to approve the levy so we can have it certified and start the process for the 21-22 budget. Questions?
Any questions? Doesn't seem like it. No questions. Very good. Well, we've been looking at those numbers for the last at least 5 days, correct? We're going to be dreaming about those numbers tonight, as usual. Okay, so all those in favor of approving this resolution for property tax levy, please say aye. Director Beebe?
Aye.
Director Bennett?
Aye.
Director Olson?
Aye.
Director Sorum?
Aye.
Director Starks?
Aye.
Director Steiger?
Aye.
And Corman, aye. This has been approved. And I believe that was the last one, correct?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you to our Executive Director of Finance and Support Services, Mr. Brad Sitkovich, for bringing those reports, all this information, and being with us tonight for so much time. That was at least an hour. Thank you. Okay, so I think we move to the next one now, which is before that one. The next one is the COVID-19 update relating to athletics and activities. Mr. Les Fujitaki, Superintendent.
Right. Great job, Rod. Chair Corman, school board members, and our viewing audience. On November 20th, our school district's athletics and activities programming was paused, and the board stated that this pause will be reevaluated during the first week of January. Also on November 20th, our governor paused the state's athletic and activities programming for 30 days till December 18th, Friday. Our governor's emergency executive orders can only be valid for 30 days. Subsequent to these two pausings, there have been two major developments. First, the Minnesota State High School League announced plans to resume programming on Monday, December 21st. Regarding a second development, the governor will announce within 2 days on Wednesday, December 16th, if he will continue his pause of the state's athletic and activities programming beyond the December 18th expiration of his executive order. Because of these two developments, tonight the board will be given an update on the latest COVID health data and our athletics and activities programming. Please feel free to ask questions and engage in conversation anytime during administration's presentations here tonight. Here tonight to present are Dr. Nick Kelly, who is the administrator of the Bloomington Public Health Department, Hannah Hatch, our school district's school nurse supervisor, Chad Nyberg, Jefferson High School AD, and John Anderson, Kennedy High School AD. Dr. Kelly will lead off the presentations. Dr. Kelly, the microphone is yours.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the school board. If we go, thank you. This updates you on the situation update about what is happening at Hennepin County. That is the state of Minnesota's number for Hennepin County ending on November 28th. Puts Hennepin County at 117.18 per 10,000 residents over the last 14 days. When we look a little bit more granular at our local data, on the 28th, Bloomington was at 127. And as of the 7th of December, we like to give us about a 7-day buffer so that our data is a little bit more accurate. It's at 122.6 per 10,000 cases, if you're looking at the metrics for school decision making. And then if you go to the next slide, this will show you we've been seeing continued increases in cases, even though we're not having school and many things are paused. we've seen an increase in cases in our school-age children. So especially in the 11 to 18 age group, we've seen a pretty large increase in the number of cases in the community. And we've seen a smaller increase, but a noticeable increase in our elementary age. That's, again, without school. That week 50 on the bottom kind of corresponds to last week from a data standpoint. And then if you go to the next slide, this will show you our rolling 7-day average of new cases per 100,000 in Bloomington. So you can see we had a peak, we went back down, and we peaked a second time. That's most likely what's associated with Thanksgiving. And it started to go down a little bit on the other side of that peak. And where that's going to go and how that's going to trend, it's hard to say right now. The CDC is projecting that Hennepin County is going to remain relatively flat from a case growth standpoint for the next 4 weeks, based on the modeling they've done and assembled from modelers around the country. I can't tell you the impact we're going to see from Thanksgiving as it continues to amplify. Each one of those cases is likely going to infect other people. And so we're going to see the amplification of those cases. So it's possible we will see some decrease. It's possible we will stay at a relatively steady high level of cases, and it's possible we will go up at some point in December. It's hard to predict right now. So from a context standpoint, the last time I shared data with you, we were closer to the 50 per 100,000 cases. So we've had points in the past where we've hit up to 120. So quite a bit of an increase from the last time I shared the data with you. And then if you go to the next slide, turn this over to Hannah.
Thanks, Nick. Good evening, members of the board. Thanks for letting us come and update you tonight. So I'm just going to show you in this slide here that the state data and guidance in the Safe Learning Plan that was presented this fall has not changed at this time. And many are wondering, with new developments and with the cases growing the way they are, will there be changes to model parameters? And I just wanted to update you following the trends and the statistics that Nick had for you, that at this time there is no plan to update the metrics presented. They still feel that the metrics that they have presented for schools are accurate at this time and are a good model to follow currently in terms of safety for students and staff. So I just wanted to include that and remind everyone, I know we've seen this several times, that at above 50, that places us in distance learning for all students in all grade levels according to the Safe Learning Plan. One other big development since we met last is that there has been FDA authorization for a vaccine for COVID-19. That happened just in the last week, and a second one is anticipated to be authorized in the following week here. The prioritization for this vaccine administration is currently designated to healthcare workers and residents of long-term care facilities. Following that, we are not sure who will fall next in line for the priority to get this vaccine. It is still under review. So we don't have an answer as to when exactly school staff would fall in that, as they're still reviewing that in the state. And then lastly, just a reminder that although this is a huge development and really exciting that there is a COVID-19 vaccine coming out, we want to be reminded that this is going to be an additional tool to add to our current mitigation strategies in place. So what that means is that this is going to be a tool as our staff get this vaccine, and some of our oldest students get the vaccine, that we'll still need to use some of those current mitigation strategies such as social distance and masking and things like that while in school. But this is a great addition to our strategies right now that we have. Lastly, I wanted to just touch on the youth sports update. And Superintendent Fujitaki touched on this briefly, that Governor Walz did issue an executive order placing a hold on all youth sports and activities. This order is set to expire on Friday of this week, December 18th, and Governor Walz will be speaking on Wednesday and will be providing more information following the impact of the Thanksgiving holiday. As Nick mentioned, we're just starting to see the impact of that holiday, and that is why the announcement from Governor Walz got delayed, is because they wanted to gather more data and see a few more days of the impact from the Thanksgiving holiday. According to the Safe Learning Plan, Bloomington continues to fall into the category of all distance learning, which states that that would place all activities and athletics on hold during this time. That is the update that we have for you today. Are there any questions at this time?
Director Sorum.
Thank you. And thank you, Hannah and Nick, for bringing us this information. I have a couple of questions, and I'll start out with one that, it seems really kind of strange or weird that if no kids are in school and no staff are in school, how can we get a report that talks about the number of staff and students on a weekly basis, or as the parent report came out talking from September? How can we have so many cases affecting staff and students?
I can take that one. I believe you're referring to the reports that were sent out by our communications department on the cases of COVID-19 in our district. And part of that is, even though we are on distance learning and not in the school buildings, we are still asking that staff and students report their positive cases and exposures to us. This is in an effort to just keep up with what's going on within our district and community, and in an effort to help with decision making when we look at who's being affected by this virus. That being said, we know that during this time of distance learning, we are only capturing a snapshot of the cases that are positive, because when you're not in the school building or attending school, we don't necessarily get all of the reports. So we also rely heavily on Bloomington Public Health during this time to help with the tracking of age groups and where they're seeing the spread take place. Even though they're not in buildings, we've been saying for quite some time that when we look at the data, the community, or the spread, is taking place by large in the community. So we are continuing to see that happen. That's what's been kind of happening all along, and that it's taking place and spreading throughout the community in that way. Another report that came out from our communications department summarized from the start of the school year in September, the cases and quarantine that we've seen. So that it was a very large number coming out, and that was a summary of all the cases we've seen this year so far. Does that answer your question?
Okay. Sure. And then with that, I want to thank you and the staff, and Nick and all of his public health staff too, for doing all the tracing or tracking or whatever it is that needs to be done for that. So our school nurses are really in a heavier situation than if there was students in the school, as they're doing so much. They still have to care for the kids and care for the families and so forth like that. But we don't do anything with private schools in the area. We're just dealing with public schools. Now, I don't know, Nick, do you get involved with any of the private school data or information from the city?
So, Director Sorum, we do get involved with some of the private schools or charter schools when there's an outbreak or an issue that they ask for some help with. Just like we provide services in Bloomington, it doesn't matter what school you're with. We share the same information and the same guidance, and we have a very tight, close working relationship with the Bloomington School District. We share with charter schools and private schools the same type of information. They're just a little different response of what they're required to do by state executive orders. Public schools are required to follow the governor's guidelines very explicitly, and the Bloomington schools are doing a good job with that.
Good. And then
Director Storm,
one last follow-up with Hannah. Sorry, was the numbers that were presented to the parents and families from September? You know, that was a staggering number, but yet at the same time, a lot of those have passed the 30-day tolerance or whatever it is, and so they don't have COVID anymore, right?
Correct. So when someone tests positive for COVID, they need to isolate for a minimum of 10 days from the onset of their symptoms or the positive test. Once those 10 days are up, they're free to return to the community or school if they have not had a fever for more than 24 hours and their symptoms are improving. So that means that most, not all, but a lot of those people that we presented to you were able to return back to school after 10 days. Now, there are people who continue to have symptoms or who are unable or it's lasting longer for them. So that definitely is a group of people. But for most people, we have them isolate for 10 days. Yes.
If I could add, Director Sorum, the purpose of the sharing that the overall data was a request by members of the board as well as members of the community. We don't do a weekly dashboard. We do share with the board weekly case counts that the work that we're doing in terms of contact tracing. The purpose was to provide a snapshot of the number of cases that we have handled since September. And while that was seemingly very, very high, as Ms. Hatch has provided to us, it is not a full accounting of the number of individuals that both staff and students that may have had COVID or may not even have been tested, but have been asymptomatic or asymptomatic. So again, it was an opportunity to share with our community as well as staff what we were dealing with to assist the board in making its decisions with respect to the various different learning models, along with the data that Dr. Kelly has provided and what the Safe Learning Plan has afforded.
Excuse me, Ms. Ash, could you also clarify your team's relationship with some of our non-public schools?
Yes.
Please.
Yes, definitely. Director Storm asked about if we have involvement with the non-public schools, and we do. I actually staff non-public schools with nurses who are hired through Bloomington Public Schools. So they are staffed through our school district. It does work a little bit different as they have pretty limited hours of nursing care at many of the schools. Some have more full-time nurses, but some of them are just more consultation or shorter periods of time there. And again, we do help consult and talk with them, just as Dr. Kelly explained, on if there's positive cases and what the recommendation is from the state and what we would recommend following that guidance. But again, they do function a little differently than we do in public schools, given their size and how they're structured. And so it is a little bit different, and they are bound by just different guidelines in what they're following. But we do staff their schools, and so I do have quite a bit of involvement with the private schools as well in Bloomington.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Director Beebe.
I have a couple of questions. I've gone on to the Bloomington Department of Health website to try to get some information, and I could not find, I guess, the screen or the page that would have how many cases per 10,000 on it. Is there some place where we can get that information? Because I really tried to find it and it wasn't available.
So Director Beebe, the cases per 10,000 are reported at the county level by the state of Minnesota. We try and dig a little deeper at the city level and provide that data and when we're working with the school district just from a context standpoint, but we don't put that data up publicly. Just the number that the state asks everybody to use is the county number. And so we use the city number for decision making.
And that's where it's challenging, because people have asked me, well, where do you get that information for the city? And so then I say, well, go to the Bloomington Department of Health website. So I don't know if there's something where you could put kind of the pattern of, you know, what has been there in the past to help show the progression or the decrease in cases. Another question I have is that the charts that you show, it shows October, but it doesn't show November, and we're well into December. And so it's kind of hard to figure out where's the break and where, like, where does November end and where does December start in the cases that are presented in the graph itself. So I don't know if you can kind of enhance that or just kind of put another little marking break, but I'm finding the information is a little hard to gather or to interpret maybe. So that would be really helpful. The other question that some people in the community have contacted me, and they say, if the CDC says that students are safest when they're in school and protected from COVID, and we look at the increase in cases in Bloomington since we closed the schools, what is the correlation? Is it safer for our kids in school? I mean, I'm trying to understand what the CDC is saying, what the Minnesota Department of Health is saying, and the reality of the evidence of COVID in the community. Could you comment on that?
Yeah, certainly, Director Beebe, and we'll work on getting a different graphic to the district staff to share too. The statement the CDC is making about students are the safest in school needs to be thought of in context of community spread. And so our data, the data we see across the state of Minnesota, shows that when community spread is low, schools are a very safe place for students. The challenge becomes as community spread increases and you have this widespread transmission around the community. While schools are a safe place, especially for elementary, we see a pretty marked distinction under the age of 10 with transmission dynamics. When you have high levels of cases in the community, there's very little you can do to keep that out of the school. And so you get a lot of disruption and challenge with staffing and students being quarantined or put in isolation. So the way I look at that is, yep, our schools are, when community spread is low, are a very safe place and the place we want our students to be growing and learning. When community spread is really high, it becomes incredibly challenging to operate schools safely.
Great.
Thank you. Director Bennett.
Yes, thank you both for the presentation, and Dr. Kelly, thank you for joining us again. I think we are extremely fortunate here in Bloomington to have such a great relationship with Bloomington Public Health that you can come in and share your data with us. I have a question for you that's kind of a hypothetical question that you may or may not want to answer. But I think every school board member in the state and every athlete and every parent of an athlete is sitting waiting for the governor to make his decision on Wednesday regarding the pause, especially when it comes to youth athletics. And so what I'm asking you is, if you were advising the governor, what would your recommendation to him be when it comes to sports? Should he continue the pause for another month, phase it out, or end it?
Very good question.
So, Director Bennett, I would probably ask the governor what his strategy is. Is his strategy to get kids back in the classroom? And if the focus is bringing kids back into the school setting, the approach would be finding the way to reduce community spread the greatest. So what we know from our data is when we looked at our data as we were getting ready to make the recommendation about moving to distance learning, sports was the third most common exposure that we saw in our students. Work and school were the top two. We know from our data, the schools are a safe place for students. Most of our students are working in the community, whether it's healthcare, food service, retail, and then you have sports. So if I'm trying to make sure that I have students in the classroom, I would do everything I can to minimize their exposure in the community, which would mean keeping sports paused, to keep kids in the classroom and get back to the classroom as fast as possible.
Okay, thank you. And kind of a follow-up question to that is Ms. Hatch just said in her part of the report that according to the MDE's Safe Learning Plan that our numbers exceed at such a level that we have to be in distance learning, including all activities and athletics. So if the governor does not renew his pause, then what would your recommendation to us be for athletics? Would it be to continue following the MDE guidelines, or?
Yeah, I would say, what's your desire from a board standpoint? The fastest way to get kids back in the classroom is to reduce community spread. And we know the more activities and the more things we open up outside of the classroom, the more we're going to see community spread. And so I would follow the MDE guidelines.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Thank you, Ms. Hatch. Superintendent, or okay, Director Sorum, before we go to Superintendent. Director Sorum, we cannot hear you. You got your microphone.
Probably a good thing for me to be mute there for a while. But anyhow, according to the high school league, they have 3 different models. So even if the pause is extended, then some of the districts are going to be able to play from the 21st on, or at least practice. You know, the league might not have schedules or the games starting until after January, but it just seems that we really are dependent on what the governor says in order for us to make a decision on how we, plan and have the kids participating. It's unfortunate that a lot of the sports are different. Some are individuals like skiing and some of the other things like that, where they are out all by themselves and not in a group setting. The indoor sports that they have, like wrestling and basketball and some of the other ones like that, are subject to a little bit different criteria. So we have to pretty much identify what we want to do as a board for all sports and all activities, not just be able to say, hey, we're going to do this one and let this one go in January and let this one go in December and so forth, right? ADs, you probably can get in on this too, huh?
I can take that one as well. So like Nick or Dr. Kelly explained, we are working, or the recommendation and what we've done all along is follow the guidance of MDE and MDH. We do agree that, there's been some variation, of course, from school district to school district, and there's been some variation within athletic programs and leagues and things like that as well. And we have seen that across the state over and over again. We've, as a district, have continued to revert back to what is the guidance from MDE and MDH. Now, when you look at the scalpel approach to athletics, which you're hearing a lot about, which is what you were referring to as looking individually at sports or looking at opening up a little bit at a time, some of that some sports, you're right, are a little bit safer than others. However, what we have seen is that community spread over and over in the socialization before games, after games, before practice, after practice, the carpooling, the gathering around sports. We've seen that happen time and time again. And it's really hard to say this sport's okay and this isn't when that is where you're seeing the spread take place. So as Dr. Kelly had mentioned, what is our priority in looking at this, and it will, as we open things up more and more, that will have an impact on students getting back in the classroom. So to continue to consider that when you're looking at it. As far as opening up just for practices, that is a safe approach if you're not seeing spread take place on a community level in Bloomington, but you're seeing it in other areas around, because then you're not going to communities around you to spread it. You're just containing students to their own community. However, as we presented, we're seeing community spread of COVID-19 throughout the entire metro right now.
Thank you, Ms. Hatch. Superintendent, let's go back to you.
Mr. Corman. We have our two high school ADs here because to talk about athletics and activities programming. They have been having conversations with other Metro West Conference members and also their colleagues. So I'm going to call upon probably Chad Nyberg first to share his insights on what's going on.
Good evening. So what we've learned over the last few days at least is just talking to our conference members and some community members that are near us, that everyone's kind of in the same spot in terms of a waiting game. As Hannah mentioned, school districts across the board have done some different things, and there's a good chance that that could happen again. We're just not certain. I think everyone's waiting for Wednesday to then have similar conversations in-house to make determinations on which directions they'll go. If it was opened up versus it remaining paused, and then we make decisions, or they'll make decisions based off of that, their boards.
So for clarification, on December 3rd, the Minnesota State High School League, and Director Sorman mentioned this, adopted 3 possible models for return. One would start on December 21st, on Monday. That is if the governor chooses not to extend his pause. One with potential start of January 4th. And then another one, Model 3, with a potential start of January 18th. They're in 2-week increments kind of after the first one. The High School League wanted to make sure that it had a plan and it was prepared for a possible extension of what was going on. So that's the 3 models that have been referenced so far. Because right now, the only winter athletic event that's going on right now is dance. Dance started before the pause, and they are currently in virtual coaching. But as far as all the other athletics and Minnesota State High School League activities, they are their season has not started. So the High School League has a framework for what all the winter seasons and spring seasons will look like based upon those 3 models. And like Chad had said, we'll see what the governor says, and that will dictate kind of the next steps of the conversations. But to reiterate, what we've done from this point on is we've followed the experts. We've listened to Dr. Kelly, and we've listened to Bloomington Health, and we've listened to MDE and MDH, and followed the guidelines that were put in front of us to make sure we have the safest possible, not just athletics and activities, but school and community for everyone. And we're ready for questions some more if you have any. So,
Director Starks.
So this isn't as much of a question as it might just be me talking for a moment, a concern. So, and I've been trying to formulate this in the whole meeting. I think my frustration with, let me back up. I'm not at all questioning what Dr. Kelly or Ms. Hatch have been sharing with us. That not having athletics and activities, not having in-person school with uncontrolled community spread is definitely the right way to go. When we made the decision, when we passed this resolution for the first time, our county numbers were below 30, and now they're 117, right? So we've quadrupled our numbers since. So it feels like this should be a slam dunk. My concern is that it's not a slam dunk, because what we're seeing from the governor's office and from the Minnesota State High School League are in direct contradiction to what we're supposedly being told. So if we have right now, when you look at the county numbers that came out from the state on the 10th, 87 counties are above 50. So 87 out of the 87 counties in Minnesota are above 50. If the governor wanted us to follow the guidelines that they published, the chart that Ms. Hatch showed us earlier, he wouldn't even be having a conversation about opening sports, because no county in the state should be having sports. No county in the state should be having in-person school. And I read the Star Tribune article where the MDE reiterated, Dr. Mueller reiterated that they're going to stay with that chart. If they're going to stay with that chart, then it has to be enforced. And it has to be done on a statewide or a countywide or a conference-wide basis. This cannot be done by a school district to school district decision. And what is frustrating me, and I'm so sorry that I'm getting a little heated right now, is that we are sitting here in Bloomington trying to make a decision for our Bloomington students when we don't know what's going to be happening in Edina or Apple Valley or Minneapolis or Anoka-Hennepin. Or even our conference partners, which the AD shared with me earlier today. They're all, I mean, I got the email, it's waiting. Every one of them's waiting. So how are we going to make a decision for our students right now without some collective approach? And I think that's why I'm really struggling with this. The other thing I'm struggling with is that our resolution is written to say that we will reevaluate at the beginning of January. Okay, so, and Mr. Anderson just mentioned that there's the 3 calendars by the Minnesota State High School League. The second one starts on January 4th. Our first meeting in which we can vote on something is January 11th. So our students would even potentially be a week behind the Minnesota State High School League calendar. So again, it's more just sharing my frustrations and how this process is happening. There's no one on this call that is at fault. There's, it's just that I don't see why this isn't a collective response instead of a district by district response. So apologize that there's no questions. And oh no, there is a question. So to the ADs, if the governor decides to reopen sports, and we still are using our resolution the way as written, do our sports get to resume virtual coaching? Is that allowed under our resolution the way it's written?
I'd say yes, because that would be the defined season at that point, but put forth by the high school league. So yeah, that would be our intro into the seasons for winter sports, is we would be doing the virtual piece of this.
Yes, Chad's correct. The seasons would start, everyone would start on the 21st, and Nordic, Alpine, basketball, hockey, wrestling, boys swimming, dance would continue in virtual. Gosh, I hope I didn't forget anyone. Adaptive floor hockey. They would all start in virtual coaching.
Superintendent, did you have a comment about that?
Yes, I do. I'm going to give you a preview of my superintendent's report. I'm going to request a motion from the school board, because we said that we would reevaluate not just athletics and activities, but our school model, instructional model. I would be making a motion, requesting a motion of the school board for a January 4th study session following the organizational meeting. So we would not need to wait till January 11th.
That's good to know. Thank you, Superintendent. Director Stark, I'll go back to you because it seems like you have a follow-up there.
Yeah. So, and I don't know how this works, so I apologize if I'm saying this wrong. Is there any way for me to get some feedback from my fellow board members? Like, I'm kind of curious as to who's in the camp of, if we're over 50, we're not running athletics and activities, period, the end. And how many of my board members are maybe interested in a conversation about something different? Because even January 4th, I mean, Dr. Kelly, I think you'd agree, we're not going to magically go below 50 by January 4th. So, there would be no reason to necessarily revisit it that quickly if we're truly just going to be sticking to that chart. But I want to know how many of my other board members are interested in something beyond that chart. Is that appropriate for me to ask?
Well, let's listen to the other board members that haven't spoken yet. How about that? Maybe you get some answers to your questions. Director,
I just wanted to ask the superintendent.
Sorry, hold on. Hold on, she was raising her hand, sorry. Director, let's go with Director Olson, and then we'll go to you, Director Sturm. Sorry. Go ahead, Director Olson.
Okay, and Director Starks, I completely agree. This is, the only reason that I think that it's okay to bring it back to discussion is to update the community, but Governor Walz is probably experiencing incredible community pressure, as we are. The incredible community pressure to make a decision that is, it seems obvious to me that why do we want to play with the numbers? If the numbers were down, risk having them go up. We have a vaccine coming along, and my dad was a high school coach and a college level coach, and none of us want to say no. None of us want to say no. But one of the things that students learn from athletics, and this is a really good test of that, is, they learn sacrifice and delayed gratification and building character. And I think that they're learning all of this from the sacrifice that they're having to make. And I know it's tough, but the other thing I have difficulty with is there are other groups of kids that are not in athletics who are also suffering from the same things that the athletic parents are telling us, they're worried about their mental health. Well, there's other groups of kids that are not in athletics, and why are we prioritizing, this? And so I do have trouble with that. There's groups, there's kids in theater. I've heard from the director with the Native American population how difficult it is for them because their culture is to have in-person and learning and to learn from observation, and they're struggling. They're all struggling. None of this is easy. And so I don't want to prioritize one group of students over the other. I think we all need to sacrifice. And if the community would just please take this seriously, this saying no is a road to saying yes sooner. And so anyway, I'm sorry. So I went off on a tangent there too, but you know where I stand, and I am consistent in where I stand.
Let's go with Director Sorum, and I believe, Director Sorum, you might have a little bit of a delay in your connection for a while now, so maybe that's why it seems like.
Really? Okay. Yeah, we all seem to be fading out and going to our icons rather than actual pictures. My concern with meeting on the 4th as a study session, we won't be able to take any action on that during a study session. So the next time we meet would be the 11th, and then that would be after it. Is there a purpose just to get some consensus on the 4th about what to do, Superintendent?
You're absolutely right, Director Sorum. We could change that. The board could change that motion to be a board session, board meeting, if the board wanted to take action that night. You're right. Thank you.
Yeah, and we can talk about that when we get to the motion part, I guess, whether or not that would be something the board wants to do. Director Bibi, your microphone is off.
This is a really hard topic, and it's hard because there's families and children involved, and it seems like each week there's a family with a desperate email coming to us, and we have to be real about the mental health issue. So I'm really glad that, Director Olson brought that up. That has been one of my big concerns, and not every family realizes what's coming. I remember, I keep bringing this up, that it was said that the rate of suicide was going to be high from COVID. And don't wonder, if it will happen. It will happen within our schools, and I don't know if it has yet. But I'm very concerned about our school kids, our high school students, and our families. And unfortunately, some families have isolated so strongly that that's affecting their mental health, and needing to have some kind of like another family at least to connect with. And I don't know if there's something that Nick or Hannah can talk to about not just the physical side of this issue, but the mental side, and what is available to our families. We talk about, supports for students. There needs to be something for more students than we're reaching right now, because the fact that some parents will contact us and wonder even if anybody will do anything tells how desperate they are, but they're afraid to reach out. And how some of these students who, before we paused things, the only highlight of their day was getting to that activity. I know there's need for sacrifice. We've had a generation that has had a lot given to them, and they haven't had to sacrifice much. And it is good training. But I also am concerned about this long-term health, mental health of our community. What are they talking about at the Bloomington Department of Health? And what are the nurses talking about when they contact families? I just would like to hear maybe more from the medical perspective, where the numbers are determining what we can and can't do. But we need to do something.
So, Director Beebe, you are correct. There is a lot of concern about mental health, physical well-being, substance use. One of the challenges we have seen loud and clear with COVID is any health issue, any structural issue in society, any challenges we have, COVID has amplified. Most of the resources we have available are on our website. Information of how to access those resources, we refer back to the district for the resources available to students. But there are many resources out there via text, via phone, and there's telehealth visits for mental health and well-being. There's no denying the challenges that this pandemic has caused. We're specifically talking right now about some of the challenges for young kids, in part because they're not in school. The reality is today we hit our 100th death in Bloomington. We are seeing about 3,000 deaths a day in the country. The reality is not only are kids seeing the impact of not being in school, kids, parents, community members are losing loved ones, and almost every one of those cases is a death occurring in a hospital setting or a long-term care setting with very little family interaction in a very different funeral. So the pain, the challenge is very real on every level of society. That's not something we can fix overnight. And the thing that gives me hope and focus on that is we have a vaccine, we have a community that keeps rallying around each other. And the fact that we can focus on digging deeper and getting through the next few months so that we can keep more and more Bloomington residents, students, staff, parents, grandparents healthy over the next few months as vaccine becomes more plentiful and we can work on putting an end to this pandemic. That's what I focus on, is looking at that every day. How do we provide those supports and structures to take care of our community? Because it is really hard. And you got to take almost every day as a new day and focus.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly, and thank you, Hannah. You know, Director Starks brought up, you know, it's a very good point. The frustration that you're expressing is, I think, is a frustration that we all board members have had for the past weeks in regards to this situation of the pausing of the sports inactivities. And it's the same type of discussion that we come to every time that I'm meeting with Superintendent Fujitaki and with Vice Chair Bennett, because every time we go into the same thing and then we go in circles back again, because what are we going to do if the governor makes a decision? Is he going to change his decision? Is he going to extend it? What is going to happen? And then the high school league, and you know, we go over all those types of conversations. And I know that as we engage in that type of conversation, there is no ending, because there is not like a precise answer to that. What are we going to do? And we know that our families are, of course, they are all struggling. The families who have kids in sports and activities, and the families who don't have them in those type of settings. And so it's difficult for our students. And as a teacher, I can say, I see it every single day. You know, the condition that this has created for my students and for all of our students, in how stressful this time is, how difficult it is. And, you know, we're doing the best that we can as well to help our students, to help them stay safe, to help to help them return to the classroom. And this is a conversation that we're certainly going to keep having with the superintendent as things develop. So, you know, I'm really looking forward to hearing what the governor has to say. You know, that will be on my side. I'm waiting to see what is going to happen and then go from there. And then, you know, I will continue to engage in those conversations with the superintendent. Now, remember also that as much as we have heard from our community of families who practice sports, we have heard that they would like us to return, to have their kids return to their sports. We have also heard from parents who have said, we prefer that you pause those sports. And you know, and it's within the same families who are involved. And so anyway, it is frustrating. Yeah, for me, it is very frustrating, the fact that we're trying to follow the guidelines. We're doing the right thing because we're following what we have told that we have to do. And at the same time, you know, we're seeing other districts are not doing it. And that has put us in a very tough spot as well when we make our decisions in our community. Okay. Director Bennett.
Sorry. So yeah, to look around that conversation that Director Starks brought up, I think I can, speaking for myself, I'm extremely frustrated as well, as everyone is. I'm not so much frustrated with the governor's orders or the MDE's plans or the directives from the league. My frustration comes with other school districts who are either indicating that they might violate all those orders or may choose to go on with sports regardless of those orders. That's where my frustration is, because we made the right decision when we decided to move to distance learning and pause sports. And we did that based on the governor's executive order that we have to follow the MD's guidelines. We followed the guidelines and we listened to Bloomington Health. So we made the right decision, and I don't plan on reversing that decision. So if our numbers are where they are now, I would not be okay with returning to sports unless the governor either rescinded his executive order saying that we no longer have to follow the MDE plan, or the MDE revised their plan. And then after that, I would look to Dr. Kelly to say, is it safe for us to return to sports? Which he just indicated it is not safe. So I think we have a long way to go before we can return to sports. We need to get our kids back into school before we can get them back on the ice. And I say that as a parent of 2 children who are doing winter sports and have been shut down. I have a son who's swimming and a daughter who does hockey, and both of them are at home. And I want them both back playing their sports because I can see the mental trauma that is causing them and the emotional trauma is causing them of being home and not having that outlet. And that's what sports are great for. It's a great outlet. Thankfully, my daughter's hockey team, they're able to do virtual. So she's still doing virtual practices and stick handling and stuff with her teammates and her coaches. So she has that, but it's still not the same thing. I want them back, but COVID doesn't care what I want. What we need to do as a school board is do what's best for our community and best for our students. And that is to prioritize getting them back into school. That should be our top priority. And until that happens, I don't see how we can even consider returning to sports. And that's my opinion. Love to hear what other board members' opinions are as well.
Superintendent Fujitaki.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair Corman. Clarification. First off, all the presentations from the administration are completed, so the conversation is good, and the conversation has been helpful. We don't know what the governor is going to say on Wednesday. He could extend it. He could undo the pause, or he could do something in between. We don't know. One option, instead of waiting, just because I've heard different things from different board members, we'll know more after the governor makes his announcement. So one option that Rick and I have talked about is to possibly schedule suggest possibly a session on Thursday, a special session on Thursday, the day after the governor makes his announcement. So that's just for the board to consider.
Director Starks.
Well, so I'm gonna talk about that quick, and then I'll go back to my other questions. So, we could do that. I mean, we could wait until the governor, talks. But one thing that I've been percolating with is the idea of just matching our resolution to the governor's decision making. The reason I asked what my fellow board members were thinking is because I wanted to see if I even had enough support to amend a resolution to match the governor. But, that would be one way to do it, is to just say, well, let's just amend the resolution. And then when the governor makes his decision, we just go forward with whatever that is. And I think, Chair Corman, you mentioned something that's also been bothering me is, when we were making the decisions about hybrid versus distance learning, we surveyed parents, and we knew that 70% of parents wanted hybrid. So that was definitely a factor in our decision-making as to whether or not to go to hybrid. We've heard from parents that either do or do not want their kids in winter sports, but we haven't had an opportunity to really get a feel for all of the families that are affected, right? Because we hear from parents that are passionate in one direction or another, but we don't necessarily get a full picture. So I don't know how many families want to go back. I don't know how many families would prefer we don't go back. And that's hard for me to not have that data point. And I know it's not one that we can get anyway. And then Director Bennett talking about, his kids in sports. I've got one that is supposed to be doing club hockey too. And my frustration is if the governor opens up sports, I can put my 6th grader in the car and he can go play, but his, 12th grade counterpart in the city can't play. And I just don't see how that makes any sense. We're either going to do this all or we're not going to do it at all. So that's my thinking, is that, if the governor and the Minnesota State High School League are saying in some universe that this is okay, when 87 counties are above 50, that's a factor for me. But I'm one of 7, so that's why I'm trying to kind of get a feel for where folks are at. And if I'm in the minority, I get it. I understand that.
Well, and certainly, I think we would all agree that we all want our kids to be able to go back and play, definitely, and to be back into their activities the same way that we want them back into the classrooms. Now, is that the right decision to do at this point? We don't, may not be, necessarily true that it is. But Director Olson.
Another concern I've had is if there are families who are hoping that we don't go back because they don't want their child, you know, there would be a lot of pressure. If we opened up sports, there would be a lot of pressure from that student and the other students on the team to have everybody return. And so there might be parents and even students who are, you know, happy that we're being the adults and making the decision is what I'm saying, I guess. That's another factor that I want to take into consideration because they're not going to speak up about that.
Yeah. Well, the truth is that right now as it is, and based on the decisions that we made, those were made because of the guidelines, because of the numbers, because we decided that the best was to go into distance learning for secondary, you know, based on the recommendations that we got for the Department of Health and the numbers that we saw, and from Ms. Hanahach too. All those recommendations are very valid. And that is the one reason why, you know, looking at the numbers as they were, as Dr. Kelly mentioned, you know, we were on that 50 number over that 50 number, and all of a sudden we're on the 100 and something, right? It's a 140 now, 127, somewhere in there, right? And so if those numbers are higher now, how do we go back to reversing our decision, especially when we know that we are following the specific guidelines that were provided to us for school board members to make those decisions? So that's where this tricky part comes to. And once again, and I don't want to keep repeating the same thing, and I don't wish for other board members to keep repeating this, but obviously, you know, this conversation and this frustration comes from the fact that other school districts are making different decisions. I mean, I won't say anymore, but those other decisions that would directly impact their students. And I guess we follow the rules, we follow the guidelines because it is practice of the school district, because it's one of our values, is integrity, because we follow. And so that's the reason why we are in this position right now. But certainly, you know, the new direction from the governor will come this week, and then I will talk to the superintendent. And if it's necessary, you know, we will either schedule that special session as the superintendent mentioned, or we will have a different school board meeting, because we can still have another school board meeting even if we don't schedule a special meeting. We just need a certain amount of days to schedule it, and then we're good. So we can even do it during the holidays if this is what we need to do. Is that okay with you? Can we leave it there so that we can move into our next item? Would that be okay with you? And then
can I hear from Director Steigoff?
Director Steigoff is raising the hand. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, everybody else I think talked about it. So I just want to go back and clarify a little bit way back, and I don't know, when we were going to distance learning, and then the whole sports needing to be virtual, there seemed to be confusion maybe in the community about, there were districts at that time that went to distance learning because of staffing issues, not because their numbers were high. So therefore they could keep their sports going, and that was within the guidelines. But people seem to not understand that we went because our numbers were high. And so when your numbers are high, you have to do the virtual coaching. That is the guideline, and there seems to be a difference now. Since then, you know, some of the districts probably numbers went high enough, and they were still trying to decide what to do about their supports, and some were definitely probably violating the guidelines, as many of you have mentioned. But then the governor put the pause on so that all could not happen anymore. So for me, the governor, if he decides to undo the pause, he's still saying, by the article that we all saw and by what we're hearing, is he's still saying, I'm not undoing the other guidelines. So he can undo the pause in those districts that, you know, if there's a place in the state that does not have high enough numbers, they could have sports and they would not have to be virtual if their numbers were not high. That's what I think he's saying if he does the pause. But at this point, as Director Starks mentioned, there isn't really anywhere that the numbers aren't that high. So I'm not for, just to say, I'm not for going against the guidelines. I believe that we need to follow the rules that are out there. We will never, ever get back to school if we can't follow the guidelines that are provided to us. I'm not going to be one of the district people that goes against them. Now, if he changes them, that's a different thing. But at this point, they're saying they're not changing them. So,
Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to clarify what Director Steigoff was sharing with respect to what some districts did when we were over that 30 and 40 count to have sports or continue to do those practices. There's been a new, instead of using the word pivot, there's a new word that has been thrown around a lot, and that's called the scalpel. Districts have skirted those case counts to because of some communication, some information that's been shared by MDE and MDH with respect to schools that take a scalpel effect to allowing some activities to continue. So it's not as hard and fast as just those numbers make it out to be. So I don't want to, the concern is painting the board into a really black and white issue when, should the governor rescind this on Wednesday, the pause to sports and activities, there will be, as Mr. Anderson and Mr. Nyberg stated, there will be districts that will take a scalpel effect and move to some form of sports and activities programming. And you, as the board, can expect to get that, the number of emails to increase if that is the result.
Thank you. Okay, Director Sorum.
Thank you. I think we should just wait until after the governor makes a statement of some kind. So if that means that we just need to a quick call on Thursday, that would be, we can continue this whole line of questioning after we know what the governor and the MDE are going to say. And then if we have to have a special meeting on the 4th, so be it. But I just think we should wait until after that. And then I guess I would ask the superintendent or the chair how we want to handle some kind of a meeting, or maybe even David Holman would say we can't really have a board meeting over the phone or Zoom a close. Formula our next plan would be.
Thank you, Director Sorum. I don't know, I guess we can, I'm trying to figure out what step I'm gonna take here with the superintendent, because we can definitely, we can schedule that meeting on Thursday if that's what the board wants to do. We can certainly do it. I mean, do we have the required amount of days to schedule a special session? I kind of doubt it because tomorrow is already Tuesday, so we don't probably.
According to our legal counsel, he said that if the board makes the decision tonight, we could hold a meeting on Thursday, a board meeting on Thursday.
A special meeting. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Holman. Director Stark.
So based on what I've heard though here, I don't think there's the need to, because even if he opens, I've heard enough board members indicate that they would not allow sports to continue in person regardless. So I just don't want to put our community through, let's wait 72 hours and see what happens to just have the same outcome that we'd have this evening.
Director Steiger, you have your hand up. Did you mean to? Okay.
I would agree that we don't need a meeting Thursday, but we really don't know if he's gonna, they're saying they're not gonna change guidelines. We don't know for sure they're gonna change guidelines. There is no reason that after Thursday, if there are guideline changes, that we could call a special meeting and we could meet the following week or whenever we need to. I mean, we should be able to find a time that we can meet. I guess would be after what you said before, when you could meet with the superintendent and decide. I'm fine with that too.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that too, because what if his guidelines come with some unexpected items? Do you know what I mean? Where it might not necessarily be, okay, extension, but okay, we're gonna open it up with this for these people under these conditions, and then we're gonna be in kind of a rush because this is on Wednesday, and we're not gonna have enough time to study the new order if there's a new one. And then when we meet on Thursday, we're gonna be like, what are we gonna do? What are we doing here? Once again, do we have all the information that we need in such short amount of time? But we can always call for a special session based on whatever decisions he makes. It may not necessarily mean that we meet and we go, and once again, we say, this is what we're gonna do, because if his order is different, then we will have to follow that order. Do you know what I mean? So I would be more in favor of waiting for his order to come or his decision to be made. And then I will talk to the superintendent, and then I will communicate with the rest of you about either a special meeting or a board meeting. I don't know what you guys think. I don't want to make this decision by myself. Everybody okay with that? Yeah? Okay, looks like. Good. And so to the families, to the students, thank you for your patience. We really appreciate that. And Director Bibi, you have your hand up. I don't know if it just happened to be a previous hand.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it just seems like there's so many loose ends. If you're going to discuss things on Thursday together with the superintendent, and then we kind of decide, do we need a meeting or not? Or do we wait to the next week to have a meeting? My question is, things may not really change until the 4th. And that was our date. And that would give us time to see if there's going to be any other changes. Would the main reason to do it sooner be so that our students can start practicing if there's sports? But we know we're not in a place where that can happen anyway with our numbers. So my thought is, do we need to really rush it?
Well, that's why I say we don't know what the order is going to be like. I mean, it's going to be an extension of his current order. Is it going to have some modifications? Do we need to talk about those modifications? So that's kind of why I'm saying perhaps, we need to wait, and perhaps we will need to meet again. There might be the right thing to do. Now, if he extends his order, so Mr. Holman, does it mean that we don't need to meet then? Just follow his order?
If the governor extends his order, you won't be able to have the sports anyway. So there's nothing you can do.
Correct. Yeah, just want to clarify that for the community as well. If you don't hear anything about a meeting either. All right. So that would be what I'll do. It's then what we'll do is we wait for him on Wednesday, and then on Wednesday, I will communicate with the superintendent about next steps, and then I will let the board know where we're going from there. Okay? Does that sound good? Great. Thank you. Okay. Anything else, Superintendent, in this item?
No. Thank you, Chair Corman.
Thank you to all presenters for being here tonight and for bringing all this information to us. We appreciate that. Okay, we're coming to our last item of the night, which is the approval of the World's Best Workforce Annual Report 2019-2020. And for that, I'd like to call Mr. Andrew Cubas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Superintendent Fujitaki, school board members
Oh,
viewing.
hold on 1 second. I almost forgot. It's just late. The resolution. There is a resolution. Director Stein, thank you.
Thank you. Be it resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 271 approves the World's Best Workforce Annual Report for the 2019-2020 school year.
Is there a second?
Second, Director Olson.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Mr. Andrew Cubas, Executive Director of Learning and Teaching. Go ahead.
Thank you. It is getting late, Madam Chair. Superintendent Fujitaki, Chair Corman, school board members, viewing public. So earlier this evening, we held our public meeting for World's Best Workforce, where we went over the highlights of our World's Best Workforce results. Dr. Heisted presented data, and a cast of many presented the details around the data. Come to the board tonight formally to seek acceptance of the World's Best Workforce report, and then in turn, we will file it with the Minnesota Department of Education tomorrow. You're muted, Chair Harmon.
Of course. Thank you. I was just saying that before this meeting, the board meeting tonight, we had the opportunity to have the meeting for the World's Best Workforce report. So I know there were questions that we were not able to ask back then. So are there any questions about the report or about this resolution? Let's see, any hands? Director Beebe.
Yeah, I really enjoyed reading the report, finding the details that you shared. I think were really helpful. One of the things in the report that you had to respond to was, you know, what are things that you are doing to help to close these gaps, whether it be an equity gap or a achievement gap. And you spoke of the success of the Leadership Academy held on Saturdays by the Office of Educational Equity. And I know I have heard some of the things they do. And Dina Wade-Ardley, the director of that area, was really good in bringing up some of the things they're doing. But I just think our community, I didn't know much about that until I started talking with Dina. And I thought maybe it would be good just to talk about a success point with that's helping us with, you know, the world's best workforce, something positive that the district is doing. And if you could just expound on that a little bit, I would appreciate it.
Sure. I'll start. I'll take that, and then I'll look to Dr. Mitchler. Dr. Mitchler, who supervises that area. If you have anything to add, by all means. But I'll certainly start. So for a good while, Dina Wade-Ardley's Office of Educational Equity has run the leadership group, where on Saturdays and different times she brings burgeoning student leaders together, and so they do a lot of activities to hone their leadership skills. And so they, as she mentioned at our earlier report, they'll talk about public speaking. They'll talk about how to be successful in school. They'll do goal setting. They'll do ways to reach goals and strategies. Some of the students are in a program called Check and Connect, where we're making sure that we're connecting with students and keeping them engaged. And so a lot of great things and a lot of great leadership happens during those Saturdays, where many students, pre-COVID, but many students, upwards of 50 students coming in. They'll go camping. They'll do experiences that they might not get to do had it not be for this leadership program. And so I've shared before, I'm a big believer in experiential learning. I think with experience comes a schema to hang new learning on. And so if you don't have that, then it's really difficult to make connections. And I think Dina Wade-Ardley's office does a great job of doing that, even more so as we're doing it from a distance. Dr. Mitchler, is getting late for me too. Would you add anything to that?
That's a great description, and as you said, Andy, our Office of Educational Equity has been doing some amazing work, great work with our families, our students, and this leadership program is one example of that. I would just add that it's actually our third goal within our equity plan is that we increase engagement in that leadership program. And so in the session that Director Kubis is talking about that we held before this meeting to look at the report, Director Wade Ardley talked a little bit about her efforts to increase engagement in that leadership program. So you're right. I'm glad you brought it up, Director Beebe. Some really great things happening there. Thanks.
Thank you both.
Director Olson.
Hi, so Dr. McClure, does this tie in with the AVID program? Because I was fortunate to, Dr. Kelly Kalorn has invited, the district and students to attend every Wednesday. They have this listening session or presentation for students who have been encouraged to join the AVID program because they're traditionally marginalized. And I just found it so encouraging to listen to students who have, been encouraged to, maybe they weren't working up to their potential because they had challenging life circumstances, and they were encouraged to follow their dream job. And also, so every Wednesday they have 3 presentations from our students from Bloomington who have pursued careers, and they're often first generation college students. And it's been, I don't know, I'd really like to encourage people to, especially students, to listen in, because you can hear about careers that you might, they might not even think about. When we're in high school, we don't know all the careers that are out there. But I'm wondering, I'm sorry, so my question was if that is tied into this, the AVID program.
Dr. Mitchell, I'll jump in if that's okay. The AVID program, Director Olson, falls under the Learning and Teaching program, but everything is so interconnected. And so your question is not, it fits right in. I would say, to answer your question directly, I would say there are students, I don't know this for sure, I would make a good guess that there are students who are in the AVID program. AVID stands for Advancement via Individual Determination. So AVID's an acronym. The way that AVID is set up, as you mentioned quite well, is to get students who might not think of themselves as college going, to get them the study skills they need, the organization skills they need, and the tools that they need to move forward. And we have really good data that those students go on to go to college. Again, back to your question, I would make a strong guess that there are students who are in Dina Wade Ardley's leadership group who are also have membership in the AVID program, but they are not directly related where you have to be in one to be in the other.
Okay, thank you. It's all just very encouraging, all of it.
Thank you. Anyone else? I just have one comment that I didn't get to make in the previous meeting because we were running out of time and I didn't want to extend it. But it's just specific to the achievement and integration part of the plan of the presentation that you had for us today. In the 2020-2023 plan goals highlights, and the number 1 that says 100% of buildings will have equity teams trained in the framework and tools of cultural proficiency. And to the comment that Director Wade Ardley had made of that how she hopes that we can accomplish this in the buildings, and I was just gonna say to that that it's more than a hope, it's also an expectation. If we remember, that this goal is specific to the Safe and Supportive Schools plan. And so therefore, there's, once again, just from me, the reminder that we're not only hoping that building leaders and staff will follow this, but that they will all be trained and that they will go through this process as well as an expectation of the plan. Yeah, so that's just that quick reminder. So there's no misunderstandings later on. Okay, so I think we're ready to vote now on that resolution. Yeah, okay, let me just get my paper for the records. I think I lost my list now. Oh my gosh, okay, I'll find it. I like to keep record of your votes. Okay, so all those in favor in approving this resolution, please say aye. Let's start with Director Starks.
Aye.
Director Olson.
Aye.
Director Beebe.
Aye.
Director Bennett.
Aye.
Director Steigaff.
Aye.
Director Sorum.
Aye.
And myself, aye. Okay, this one has been approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cubas. All right, let's go to our next item, which is board member reports. Are there any reports from board members? Director Steig.
I'll try to be really quick because I know the meeting's been long for everyone. First of all, the Education Foundation of Bloomington had their meeting. Primarily was updates on donations, grants, scholarship information. There's stipends to teachers. There was an update on one of those, or to educators. There was also election of new officers at that meeting. I think that pretty much sums it up. And then also the Pathways Advisory Committee met, and they had the same report that you saw earlier at 6 o'clock. They reviewed the world's best workforce, and there was great conversation and feedback to district staff there before the presentation came to us tonight. There was also a conversation around suggested new classes possibility. And then last thing, I just want to remind everyone related to, for people that don't know, that committee reviews curriculum also. And so I just want to remind people that the social studies standards are up for review. And so if you want to have influence on the state of Minnesota social studies standards, please go to the Minnesota Department of Education website, and there are links there for you to make your comments or be involved in virtual meetings or whatever it is. Just go look at the links. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Olson.
Thank you for bringing that up, Director Steigaff. So I attended the Special Education Community Advisory Committee, and I have the details that I vaguely spoke about last meeting. They're having a wellness and mental health forum. 2 sessions that will be the same so that people can attend whichever one's convenient. December 15th at 12:30 and December 16th at 6 p.m. And it's open and free to all Bloomington families. It's a great way for parent networking during the pandemic. And there will be, resources offered and interest in future topics, and they'll discuss needs not being met. And I just think it's a great opportunity. So I wanted to make sure I put that out there.
Thank you. Anybody else? Director Beebe.
I attended the Association of Metro School Districts directors meeting, and one of the things was discussing the educational amendment that is out there by Neil Kashkari of the Federal Reserve and former Justice Alan Page. And there was a lot of discussion about the consequences of passing it could be significant on school districts because of misinterpretation of definitions, and also we are all wanting the best for our students, and everybody wants a quality education, but others may define quality in a different way. So I actually have the resolution. If you're interested, I can email it to you, as well as what the position paper that the Association of Metro School Districts presented. So there's a need for discussion about it in the education community in Minnesota. So I encourage you to look at it. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you, Director Beebe. And by the way, now that you say that, do you all get the messages from AMSD at all, or emails? You do? Okay, just want to make sure that everybody's getting there. Yeah, just in case, so we can send them to you. Okay, anybody else? Doesn't look like. Okay, so let's go to Superintendent's report.
Great. Thank you, Chair Corman. As you and I discussed at our last meeting, I invite Mary Burrows, Executive Director of Human Resources, to give a status report on negotiations with the paraprofessional unit. Mary, please.
Okay. Yeah, I did want to give a brief paraprofessional negotiation update and also kind of respond to the public statement earlier tonight. As I've reported previously, we began negotiations with the paraprofessional unit October 2019. After several sessions, we entered into mediation in February of 2020. We have had 3 mediation sessions that got slightly delayed because of COVID. Our final one was in June. In that session, the district gave our last best final offer, which means that we have given our last best financial offer. That offer was in line with our other 6 bargaining units for the 1921 contract period and included increases in both wages and benefits. Since June, the unit has contacted me twice to ask to continue negotiating the 1921 contract. Each time I responded that the district would be willing to meet to discuss any contract language items, non-monetary items, or how to reallocate the funds that the district already offered in our last best final offer, but would not increase our total financial offer given in our last best final offer. I have not heard any dates back in response from the unit. Additionally, we have had demands to bargain conditions related to COVID and have held meet and confer sessions with the unit regarding those and have offered to continue to meet and confer on those items. Finally, the paraprofessionals are not working without a contract. The terms and conditions of the contract remain in place for both the paraprofessionals and the district until a new contract agreement can be reached. Both parties have to abide by what we've agreed to. And that ends my brief update.
Thank you, Ms. Burrows. The administration has a request for the board for 3 motions. First, the administration requests a motion to establish a virtual closed session of the school board on Tuesday, December 15th at 6 p.m. The meeting will be closed as permitted by law to discuss district labor negotiation strategies. May we have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second, Steiger.
Okay, moved by Director Bennett and second by Director Steiger. All those in favor of approving this motion, please say aye. Director Beebe?
Aye.
Director Bennett?
Aye.
Director Olson?
Aye.
Director Sorum?
Aye.
Director Starks?
Aye.
Director Steiger?
Aye.
And Corman, aye. It has been approved.
Thank you. Regarding a second motion, administration requests a motion to establish a virtual study session on Monday, January 4th at 6 p.m. to discuss organizational matters for 2021. May I have a motion, please?
So moved. Beebe?
Seconded, Director Olson.
Okay, so it was moved by Director Beebe and second by Director Olson. All those in favor of this motion, please say aye. Director Beebe?
Aye.
Director Bennett?
Aye.
Director Olson?
Aye.
Director Sorum?
Aye.
Director Starks?
Aye.
Director Steiger?
Aye.
And Corman, aye. This has been approved.
Great. Thank you. For the third and final motion, administration requests a motion to establish a virtual special school board meeting on Monday, January 4th at 7 p.m. to reevaluate the model movement planning along with the pausing of programs and activities. May I have a motion, please?
So moved. Beebe?
Second, Starks.
Okay, so it was moved by Director Beebe and second by Director Starks.
Oh, I have a question before we vote.
Yeah, and then let's go there. Director Bennett.
Yeah, is that gonna, do you think that's enough time if we do it at 7? If we do our organizational meeting at 6, is that enough time to finish an organizational meeting in an hour, or should we look at doing this meeting at 7:30 instead.
I'm relying on Executive Secretary Deb Bonko. She gave me these times. She thinks we can get it done in an hour.
Okay. Well, she's been through this rodeo a lot more than I have, so I think we'll defer to her expert judgment.
Oh, wait, looks like Deb wants to say something.
Okay, so at 6 o'clock, it is an organizational study session to discuss matters. The organizational meeting is on January 11th. Just want to clarify. Thank you.
So it looks like we're gonna be safe.
Well, I was just asking because I don't want us get to 6:55 and we haven't finished that meeting and say, well, we have to adjourn this meeting and get to the other meeting. It's kind of why I was saying it. But if we can move that meeting along quickly, then that's fine. I can't remember how long they usually take. They seem like they take longer than an hour, but I can't remember exactly off the top of my head.
Yeah. Director Starks.
Well, we were rushed a little bit last year, but we also had 2 new board members. So, Director Olson and I were trying to fit our way into committees and such, whereas this year it's, everybody's returning. So I don't know if there'll be as much movement on committees or as much discussion as there was when we were brand new.
Good point.
Chair Corman, Deb Bonko wanted to say something.
Go ahead.
I think if you're more comfortable, we could certainly change it to 7:30. Your choice.
Well, that would give us a moment for a break too. Should we say 7:30? Are people okay with that? Okay. All right. So I think we're ready to vote now. First, with the 7:30 change. Okay. So all those in favor?
I think we have to amend the motion. The motion was at 7.
That's right. Okay. Superintendent, or maybe who was the one that started? Director Bibi, were you the person to make the motion?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
So we want to amend the motion for the what is it? The study session to start at.
It's a school board meeting, a virtual school board meeting.
A virtual school board meeting to begin at 7:30 p.m. after our organization meeting that starts at 6 o'clock. So.
No.
Second.
Okay.
Are we good? Okay, it was moved by Director Bibi and second by Director Bennett. All those in favor, please say aye. Director Bibi?
Aye.
Director Bennett?
Aye.
Director Olson?
Aye.
Director Sorum?
Aye.
Director Starks?
Aye.
Director Steiga?
Aye.
And Corman? Aye. Okay, this one has passed.
That was to amend the motion.
Now it's put on the
Oh,
resolution.
that was to amend the motion. Oh my gosh. Okay. Okay. So motion amended. Now let's vote on the motion. Okay. And we know what we're voting for, right? Or do we need to state it again, Mr. Holman? We're good.
I think everybody understands it's been amended to 7:30.
Right.
Perfect. Okay, so all those in favor of this motion, please say aye. Let's go different direction. Director Steiga.
Aye.
Director Starks.
Aye.
Director Sorum.
Aye.
Director Olson.
Aye.
Director Bennett.
Aye.
Director Bibi.
Aye.
And Corman, aye. And now it has passed. Superintendent.
Yeah, this is the closing. On behalf of the entire district team, we wish the board and the entire school community a happy and healthy and safe holiday season. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Starks?
So just a quick question. Do we have to motion to cancel the meeting on the 28th? Or have we already done that?
The 28th?
The December 28th? I have on my calendar that it says to be canceled by board action.
We have done that.
We've already done that. Okay. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Any other business? None. And then I'd like to move adjournment of the meeting. Is there a second?
Second, Steig.
All those in favor, please say aye. Director Steigaff. Director Starks.
Aye.
Director Sorum.
Aye.
Director Olson.
Aye.
Director Bennett.
Aye.
Director Beebe.
Aye.
And Corman, aye. And this meeting has been adjourned. Thank you very much. Have a good night.